usual. Welcome back, everybody. It's so good to see everybody's beautiful faces, and a very happy Thursday to everyone, wherever you happen to be. What anyone burning with something they'd like to share right off the top?
I've got something. I've sent you the DM on Twitter actually.
Go ahead, Akil.
So the article says Facebook blocked hashtag calling for Narendra Modi to resign over pandemic.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a big hot mess of a story. Monica's here, and thank you for bringing this one up, Akil. This is a crazy one. We got to dive into as a group because the Indians will certainly have the inside scoop, but there's other elements as well. So don't hesitate to jump on stage on this one if you've got an opinion. We will do a poll on this one for sure. But particularly if you happen to be on the ground in India, we would love your input. And then we do have people who actually work at Facebook, like Michelle, who let me see, is she on stage right now? Not yet. So she might be
No, I've
joining
been
us.
looking for her. She's not here.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll look out for her.
yeah. If she jumps in, that would be great too. We have a few friends that work at Facebook. Yeah, so that'd be great if they are able
It's
to.
spreading, Tyler, and I'm not talking about COVID.
I know what you mean, and that I'll give you a nice ding for the pun there. But so let's read this one right here. So can you go? Oh, you sent me the link, so I'll read yours from the Guardian. Here we go. So to start things off, from the Guardian in the UK, Facebook blocked hashtag calling for Prime Minister Modi to resign over pandemic. Users based in India noted on Twitter that the hashtag resign Modi hashtag has been blocked from view on Facebook. A hashtag calling for the resignation of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was briefly blocked on Facebook on Wednesday, hiding more than 12,000 posts critical of the Indian government as the coronavirus pandemic spirals out of control in the country. Facebook users based in India noted on Twitter that the hashtag resign Modi had been blocked from view on Facebook. Users searching the hashtag were given a message that said such posts were, quote unquote, temporarily hidden here because some content in those posts were against our community standards. And there's a doctor in India named Dr. Srinivas who did a tweet saying, "Hey, Facebook, what is this?" Showing this the response. It says as of 12:50 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the hashtag was again accessible on Facebook from the U.S., and a Facebook spokesperson confirmed it had been restored after a brief outage that was accidental. And now here's the quote from Facebook. "We temporarily blocked this hashtag by mistake, not because the Indian government asked us to, and have since restored it."
Very interesting choice of words there.
Now here's where it gets interesting, friends. The blocking of the resign Modi hashtag comes after Twitter faced criticism for deleting more than 50 tweets critical of the Indian administration's handling of the pandemic after a legal request by the Indian government. So, Facebook and Instagram had already blocked a number of posts about Modi on the orders of the government, according to the Wall Street Journal. Facebook India has previously faced criticism after a Wall Street Journal report in August revealed connections between a top Indian policy employee and Modi's party. That employee resigned after sharing a Facebook post that called India's Muslims a degenerate community for whom blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the point here is that Modi's administration has told Facebook and Twitter to take down posts that were critical of Modi's party, and they have just 48 hours ago. And now this hashtag has been blocked within India, and Facebook is saying, "Oh, that was an accident. The party didn't ask us to do that." Well, that's interesting. You reveal that because nobody asked you if the party asked you to do that. We're just asking you why is this being blocked? What an interesting reply that it was an accident. And additionally, by the way, the party didn't ask us to block it. Let's take a poll here. Can we do a poll, Cal? I want to do this respectfully because I'd love to get a pulse check here. How many people think that the party Modi's party did ask Facebook to. How many believe Facebook? Let's just put it that way. How many of you believe Facebook when they say it was an honest mistake and the party didn't ask us to do this? Can we ask that question?
Yeah, why not? Let's
Okay,
do it.
let's do that. Okay, so the question is, and we're doing this because for those of you who are new here, welcome to Tech News Around the World, where this widely regarded as the most intelligent and, as you can see for yourself, clearly the most beautiful audience in all of Clubhouse. It's not the beautiful part that helps us with this poll; it's the most intelligent part. So we want to take advantage of your beautiful minds and do a quick poll to find out if you believe Facebook when they say it was a accident and that the Modi's party did not ask for them to block this hashtag like they did 48 hours ago when they did remove content that Modi's party didn't like. So please raise your hand to jump on stage. If you on the bottom right hand corner, there's a little raise your hand to jump on stage. Use that to raise your hand to let us count the number of folks who believe. If you believe that Facebook is being honest here in saying that it was an honest accident and that the party didn't ask us to do this. Go ahead and raise your hand. Anybody?
Do you believe Facebook?
Anybody at all? And go ahead and raise somebody. Anybody?
It's zero.
Go ahead. Just one person. If anyone
One person.
just
That person must be from Facebook.
hold up. We got
Oh, no,
whoa. He
they're
was there and
gone.
he's gone. Where'd he go? Hold on. There was one.
He's from Facebook.
Yes.
There was one for a hot
My
second.
goodness.
It could have been a misunderstanding. Okay.
Let's see if the machine is working. Let's see.
Yes.
So let's say the opposite side,
Yes.
right? So you don't believe Facebook.
Raise your hand if you don't believe Facebook and you think the party actually did ask them to take this down, or
it's
at a minimum, or it wasn't a mistake at all. There's no mistake here, and Facebook is lying publicly through the press. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 briefly, 29, 30, 31, 31, going once, going twice. That's the biggest margin we've ever seen. Wow.
And a big proportion of the room because the room's still growing. So
yeah, exactly. So nobody believes Facebook on not a single person. There was one person who raised their hand for exactly 1 second. So
they must be so deluded inside their organization that they actually think people might believe them, or maybe they don't. They just don't think that.
Clearly, people do not believe Facebook, and so that's why we can do these polls. This is fantastic. So, anyone on stage want to try and take Facebook's side on this one?
I don't want to take their side, Tyler, but I ran an ad for tiny homes on Facebook Marketplace, for the Tesla workers, and they said it was against community standards, and so I protested it, and they came back and said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we made a mistake. We're gonna restore it." Well, they haven't restored it for 2 weeks. I've sent them 8 or 10 messages, and they still won't restore it. And you can't. They only give you one choice to either delete it or nothing. That after there's no reply button to their notice of takedown. There's no reply.
Yeah, just delete it and create a new campaign. I imagine the only apprehension I can imagine is that you used the word Tesla in the ad, which in this case
I did not.
Oh,
I did not.
That's wild.
And I can't do anything on Marketplace now. I'm banned from Marketplace.
That's so weird.
Very weird. Very weird.
When Michelle comes
they
in,
sent me a notice saying we were wrong. They said we were wrong.
That's so weird.
Hold
on.
I have a question. Tyler. May I ask it?
Go ahead, Frost.
And I mean, if any place is like home, it's this place to me, and all my friends know me as a peacemaker here, although I might have just caused a riot in Clubhouse, but that's besides the point. And this is to the Indian friends that we have up here, and most of my friends are Indian, and I don't care about politicians or personalities or religion, creed, nationality. It is what it is. But what's the matter on the ground? What is the feeling on the ground around Prime Minister Modi and around all the anti-Muslim comments being made? I know the population of India. The percentage of Muslims in India is much larger, for example, than the entire population of Pakistan. So that gives you a stat right there. But I'd love to, politely request my Indian brothers and sisters here to kind of give their educated opinion as to what the truth on the ground is in this matter around President Modi, around the party, and what the party's statements online are with regards to certain Muslim fractions of the population. If that's okay.
What can you refine the question a little sharper?
I don't want to refine it. I think they get the idea, because if I refine it, it might become a bit too political. Monica, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, well, there's a lot of anti-Muslim stuff coming up in India nowadays, particularly around President Modi and his and the various political parties that are going around spreading riots between Muslims and Hindus, sorry, in India. Anyone?
I'm not. It's not being Indian myself. I'm having a difficult time. I understand the implication, but I don't know anything about it. But I think that in this case, the
you
issue.
See that headline that you just read there?
Yeah.
Even the end of it had a Muslim portion to it.
Yes.
If you talk a little bit more about that, then that'll shed light upon it.
Is that what do you think, Monica? Is there something? Is there a connection between the Facebook, the Modi's party wanting to ban tweets and Facebook posts critical of their party? Do you think that's somehow related to something more specific? Because it seems to me that the hashtag that they were banning today, which was what again? Here it is.
So let me just add, Tyler. It's not specifically related, but there have been other instances where, for example, public statements around certain things that are happening, that are being said are happening in India around the Muslim population is being removed. It's just a question.
Yeah, I get you.
No, so there is. Let me just say,
there you go,
you're dead on for us. Yeah, no. Look, there is a broader context. I don't know if you want to discuss it here in Sunny Form, but Faraz brings it up, and it's a fair point. There is a broader context. If anybody is reading anything about Indian politics, and the Modi government has been criticized over many years, even before he went into power, for being anti-Muslim, and some of the things he did as the minister in Gujarat. So some of that continues. And during this election season, right, just in the public news everywhere, you hear people, the opposition party, effectively bringing up the perspective that he's got certain things, and this criticism about him being anti-Muslim continues to surface itself. But I do think that this particular issue we're talking about here, which is to do with the elections currently, but also generally speaking, also not around the COVID thing, not wanting to lose face, not wanting to, admit, failure in any way. That could be a potential thing here more specifically. But for us, there is a big discussion about that. Maybe that's something that we could talk about in a spin out room or something. But
sure,
I do think that it's a big issue. No, it's I agree. And there are rooms here which I have been to over the last 2 or 3 days to try and learn about this from the front line, where the Indian people.
And please, by no means am I pointing fingers. I'm just asking a question because I don't know about it.
You are. Which is why I'm just trying to give as much context as I understand. But there are rooms over that are discussing from the opposition party's point of view. What's interesting here is that discussing it from the opposition party's point of view about what Modi's doing wrong about COVID, but of course it's got the underlying premise of all the things he does wrong, right? So it's a complicated thing right now in India about this, and in the meantime, people are dying, right? So
can I jump in on the tech side of this, which is just that this is another example of these tech nations, right? That they can influence elections or influence cultures. And so these tech companies and how big they are and how much power they have, and that's a big issue. And the other one is moderating platforms throws them, it's this whole 230 argument, right? So the more they moderate, the more they're going to put themselves under regulation or indicate that they should. And so there's that issue. Yeah, and so there's that issue, and then whether they comply with a government request to take something down, because there's plenty of times they don't require reply, so that they can say that or try to lean on that, or they tell politicians, you make it a requirement that we have to do this because we can't take that step. So there's a lot going on. There's so many factors here and angles.
Yeah.
I'd like to just step in and say one thing that for us, I completely understand and agree with a couple of things that you said. This is the public sentiment going on in India as well. But the fact of the matter is that no matter what the ruling party is going to be, India is kind of split right down the middle as far as polarization is concerned, very much like America. So it's a concern as well as the cause for a much larger debate. I actually underline every single line that Jennifer said here, because the tech companies are responsible. See, at the end of the day, they're all capitalists, so they have to make revenues, and India is a land of opportunity in terms of the next billion users as well as the current billion users. So they'll have to comply with whatever the law of the land is. Having said that, the last 10 or 7 years have been Modi. So what is to say that when the government changes, this will not happen again? And I'm not saying that this didn't happen previously. I'm not saying this will happen again or it will not. All I'm saying is that if you're on the tech provider side, like I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have worked for a FANG company in their past or currently working there. They'll tell you that if you don't comply, and I've worked with a foreign company, so I can tell you that as well. If you don't comply, including two of my companies, both of them, you're basically shunted out. It's okay if China does it. It's not really okay if other countries do it. So somewhere, somehow, a lot of us are learning the hard way that global companies have to toe the government line, and it's a very very thin line, and you have to, and that's where legal and policy has become such a hot profession in India. And again, it's one of those that we can again talk about. So I hope we will have an India Tech Room where we'll specifically talk only about these items. But Jennifer, you made an excellent point, and no amount of tech regulation, and trust me, some of the Facebook people, if they tell you the kind of regulation that they have to get into, the kind of content and inflammatory content that is out there, if any normal person was to read it, I think your blood would boil. Even, and if you were an uninformed, uneducated person, then yes. If you were not, and you were, you wanted to understand the other side or the other opinion, then you'd probably be okay. But if you just had that blood boiling mentality and you were in the middle of something that was burning, you would step in, and then what can happen. That's the problem that I think these networks have. Social media is a great influencer, but it's also a tool of great destruction.
Mm. And what are we to? I mean, essentially, Facebook is losing some trust points in saying that this is just an accident. And by the way, the government didn't ask
Yes.
us to do this, because even in saying that, it almost assumes, well, you didn't. They could have just said it was. Oh, sorry, it was an accident. They
Absolutely.
They didn't have to add. Oh, by the way, the government didn't ask us to do this.
And
It's
Tyler Niti, which is Ministry of Information and Technology in India, Electronics and Information Technology in India, actually released a statement saying that they did not ask Facebook to take this down, and this has happened in the past where there has been content that has been asked to be put down, but this is not one of those instances. So I don't know where the manufactured again. Like you said, there are two sides. I'm sure we can believe one or the other. All I'm telling you is because I specifically read that. So
it's just too weird. And I love the poll that we did here. That was very insightful. I mean,
Can I
very
jump
Zero is
in?
like the best number, right? Zero is there's no doubt about that.
that was very revealing in a way. I mean, that took me by surprise. Like you said, is this thing working? Hello, is this microphone on? That was crazy. Yeah, so the room has gotten double in size since then. But basically, for everyone who's just joining, the top headline in some respects today is Facebook blocked a hashtag, which the hashtag is Resign Modi in India. They blocked the hashtag in India, and then later said, and it was 12,000 posts that were critical of the Indian government, in particular around the coronavirus pandemic spiraling out of control in the country. And then India's response was, right here, we temporarily blocked this hashtag by mistake, not because the Indian government asked us to, and have since restored it. And we did a poll to find out, do you believe Facebook's claim here that this was all an accident? And not a single person believed it, and 30 people didn't believe it. So if you do happen to be of the mind that you do believe them, we would love to hear both sides of this argument, because that in fact is the nature of what we want to do here. We don't actually want a one-sided argument. We would love to hear the best possible arguments put forward to try and get a sense for. And we're trying to ping in Michelle, who works at Facebook, because I can't think of a better person to pose the argument from the other side. But if anyone does, we would love to hear it.
Tyler, I think the argument here is that if it was a mistake, then they should be able to put it back. That's the first thing. Second thing is
Oh,
Instagram.
that's a
I don't know
great point. Were all of those 12,000 posts restored? Is a great question.
exactly. I mean, they have the backup. And the second thing is this happens across the platform. I think we discussed this last month about Instagram. I don't know if you remember when I highlighted Sri Lanka government. They asked for a particular hashtag to be removed, which was something like to put in the current context, it's people were tweeting with a hashtag called Rohingya people. So just imagine, in the context of Sri Lanka, there was something called Tamil Elam, meaning the Tamil people. So the Sri Lankan government asked that to be removed, that hashtag to be removed, and Instagram removed it. And then what happened is, around globally, we just lobbied it, and then they said they will put it back in again. So I think Facebook and Instagram, given that they're similar, same, under the same umbrella, I think they do this purposely. I think they play the political hand, so, and then they just try to brainwash people around it.
Yeah, it's interesting that this topic even came up in the last Clubhouse town hall, where the issue is when they're starting to go internationally and how they are going to handle. And the question that was asked was, does Clubhouse give data to the CIA or something like that? And they said, it clearly rehearsed, but very authentic and clear response was, we do comply with the governments and the U.S. government and all governments and where we do business, but we do think ethically about what's being asked of us, and if it goes against our own ethics, then we would choose to not do business in that country, which I thought was a perfectly well stated answer. But then that raises the question: if you were Facebook and a country is telling you to take down posts like this that you disagree with, I guess it's different when you're a publicly traded company, because if you're a private company, you could do whatever the hell you want to do. The second you become public, you get all of these public shareholders who own a decent percentage of your company. They might actually sue you if you tried to pull out of India, or something. You know what I mean? So your hands might be tied once you become a public company in terms of control of having a fiduciary responsibility to make the best decisions financially for the company. It gets very complicated.
I think
Yeah,
the
that's
best
what
way,
Is
Monica
right or
brought up, the
wrong.
capitalist viewpoint, right? So that's what Monica was saying.
Tyler, the best way to think about it, I think a month ago we talked about, remember so Russian Vladimir Putin asked Twitter to
Right?
delete, do you remember? And then
Yeah.
Twitter has to comply. And then the sanction, if they didn't do it, was to be how they would be able to conduct business in Russia. So I think it happens. I think, I think we see that in the financial industry as well. They do say that certain data will not be, but they have to comply. I think it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
They have restored the hashtag back, and you can see all those posts. In fact, that's been confirmed by Facebook that the mistake was made, and the hashtag has been restored along with the posts.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Tyler, could I
Here's
say
the
something?
Yes. Son.
Um, so yeah, I think as a location consultant, I could also I want to raise a question. If the fact that most of these big companies who have these departments set up in India, and in fact, my girlfriend worked for Facebook, and her role was to work in that department where they're supposed to block all that inappropriate content. And could there be any connection? Because at the end of the day, me as a location consultant, I know for a fact that most of these big companies go to India to have these large teams because they can find the right talent, and it's way cheaper than operating from any other country. So I'm wondering if there is any connection there. And I also come from an Indian family, actually. So
Thank you, Sonny. Let's open to the floor there.
It reminds me of the room you hosted the other day, Tyler, with Asian VC, when we heard from the leadership team at Chingari that they were asked by the government to take down some videos.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can I add something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention that sometimes I wonder what really Facebook and all these big companies are up to, because I remember back in Uganda during the election time, that was around January or February, thereabouts. The president himself of Uganda told Facebook to undelete posts that his campaign team had posted that Facebook had decided to remove from circulation, and they actually did not. But because I do understand Uganda has maybe about 5 million or less Facebook users. But if you look at a country like India, they probably have a little bit much more, or even many more users. So in that case, they're bound to respond. But for smaller countries, it doesn't matter. They will not do it. Why? Because they feel that's against their ethical practice. But if India asks for it, they'll definitely do it. Why? Because they do have a large audience there. So it's more capitalistic than I think the way they put it, to say that it's their ethical guidelines and things like that. That's my
Tyler, I will
Can
draw
I
one.
jump in?
Yeah. Thank you, Arnold. And by the way, Arnold, thank you for sharing, the Ugandan, perspective on this, because we have the American perspective. Of course, we mentioned how Trump was banned from Facebook and Twitter. That's something to consider in all of this. Of course, it plays into this somehow. It's a complex puzzle. But then there's the Indian aspect. There's as you said, this Ugandan election that I was not aware of. And by the way, that is the essence of what we do here: is trying sometimes those turn into little gems that help us really figure out what's going on. So thank you, Arnold. Yes, Monica.
Tyler, I just wanted to draw your attention to one fact that
Yeah.
American Express and Diner have actually have been asked to stop issuing new cards in India, specifically because they didn't comply with the Indian regulation.
Oh,
Now, if I were to look at the same lens that we applied here, then it would be, why is this happening? Why
right.
did they not comply?
Sure.
But, when it's social media, we obviously look at it because of the humanistic aspect and, of course, the fact that it's humans interacting rather than machines. But the laws of the land trump everything else. So just wanted to bring that case in point. And I'm so glad Arnold spoke, because I remember the same case, which was Uganda, actually being brought up in India. That is that more and more countries are actually demanding, especially during election time, that social media gets regulated, because the ability to sway elections one way or the other is very strong.
Right.
And we all know with Facebook and the background with what happened in the US elections. So there is a great amount of scrutiny that normally gets placed on these kind of companies. And one very last fact, which will make you all chuckle, but as far as human errors are concerned, this very, very large bank in India had one of the most funniest problems in the world. They actually said that all their card processing used to go down at night, and it used to happen at a particular time of the night. So nobody could figure out what was happening until it was figured out that the person who was actually cleaning used to come and unplug the servers. So yes, it was a human error. It was one of those mysteries that took months to solve. So that's why I said it will create a chuckle. I just wanted you to say, never rule out human error. People were thinking conspiracy. People were thinking the networks are down. People blamed risk related service that was put up. Don't even ask what the kind of analysis that went through.
Wow. Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
Ragav.
That does apply to this. You're making a good argument for how this could potentially have been an honest mistake on Facebook's part. Yeah. Sorry. Who did I interrupt there? Sorry.
Oh no, it's all good. So I actually lived in the home state where the current prime minister is from,
Yep.
and like I think over the past couple of years, we've seen this particular government show a lot of signs of like trying to stifle as much dissent as possible. So like in particular, like so actually my uncle is one of the like most prominent like the cricket sorry no critics of like the current government. His name is Pratap Bhanu Mehta. He's like one of the biggest like voices against like the government, and he actually was like there was a lot of political pressure put on the university where he was like a professor, and they actually had to like release him from his job as a result of like the political pressure because he was like speaking against the government. And I think like this government in general, like they've been trying to like silence a lot of the people that are like their most vocal critics.
Mm.
And so this doesn't really seem like an accident. It seems like damage control from like Facebook, really.
Yeah. Well, this is where it gets interesting, because you bring up a gem like that, and it helps us, kind of the picture starts to get more fidelity or and higher resolution around this consistent point of, they're very sensitive of how of people being critical of them, and there seems to be a pattern where if somebody's critical, they get removed, etc. So
there was another interesting anecdote as well. So my father's an academic as well, and so he used to work at IIM Ahmedabad, and I actually heard the story I think a month ago, where I think there was a PhD thesis that was submitted at IIM Ahmedabad, and basically like it was very critical of the government, and the government tried to have that PhD thesis removed from like the like consideration, or like halted on like from publication. And the university's provost basically denied that request, saying that it was like free speech. But they've tried doing stuff like that as well. Anything that they feel is even like slightly threatening their authority, they'll try to silence it instantly.
Okay, so let's
I think we'd like the idea as well, Tyler, if it's okay.
say that again. Yes. Oh, yes. Welcome back, Mabwana.
Yeah, so Tanzania's had an interesting journey in this kind of regulation, social media. Going about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a really horrible tanker accident. So some fuel blew up on a highway, and a lot of people WhatsApp videoed it and Instagrammed it and shared it. And then the government were like, obviously came in and said this is ridiculous and told everyone to stop sharing it. And then kind of since then, they've progressively gotten more aggressive on censoring social media for not necessarily the right reasons. So we've had 2 elections where they've censored. More recently, the president that passed away in Tanzania, we blocked Twitter and Facebook in October, November, ahead of the elections. And then on to this year during COVID, we had a similar wave to India. So the India situation parallels very closely what happened in Tanzania, in that we let our guard down. COVID was denied or being in the country, and then suddenly February, March, boom, it just hit. And then the government had tried to again block Facebook and Twitter, but in this case, they're not asking for takedown from Facebook or Twitter. They're blocking it themselves, and then of course people discover VPN. So this is not always about asking Facebook or Twitter to take it down. If they don't have the relationship with those big tech companies, they can try and do it themselves, or try and also ban it legally. So in Tanzania, you weren't allowed to talk about COVID at all on WhatsApp or social media or anything. The telecoms regulator asked people to screenshot anyone talking in groups and send that screenshot to the government, and they would arrest them. And it got so ridiculous that people were using VPNs to get news from Kenyans who are our neighbors about the state of our president, because he went missing for 2 weeks and supposedly died of COVID, right, in March. And this is comical kind of situation where we were getting all our news. If you had VPN, or you had to use VPN, which is basically everyone, they would go through Twitter, read the Kenyans who are allowed to tweet about it. Obviously, they're not banned from doing that. And then and so it became really weird. And then actually today, apparently Twitter has actually been unblocked officially in Tanzania after I think 7 months. Election plus COVID.
This is so wild. I thank you for this, Mabwana, and to the other folks as well. This is just an aspect of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, these social networks, that Americans are not at all aware of, right? Some
of us support this for what it's worth.
Make your point, Charles? Yeah, go.
Well, I would say that in the U.S. context, we increasingly have people who are unpersoned and deplatformed. And some of those people, and I say this as the first person who was banned from Twitter, I think unjustly, but perhaps wisely on the part of Twitter. I happen to favor a lot of these restrictions, particularly around election times, because we've seen the role of state actors at sort of developing October surprises that they then launder through social media. You could think most recently of the Hunter Biden laptop, which there's a lot of evidence pointing at multiple state actors being involved in that. You could point to other examples as well of basically things like the Macron leaks, right, in France, which were possibly Russian. And so I think when it comes to state security, social media and it needs to basically be limited by the state in a serious way. And I didn't start out having this view. I've changed probably 180 degrees on it. I
So
used to be much more of a free speech absolutist on these points,
how
but when you're
I agree with Charles. This
yeah,
is why I started my story with the tanker accident, because it was awful when that happened. The government were like came in and said no, Sharon, it was awful. There was also a fear in Tanzania of foreign influence, which of course we know in the U.S. Right? And so the Tanzania that we don't want, because the dollars are spent overseas. No one's spending Facebook dollars, ad dollars in Tanzania, so there's a real risk of tampering on Facebook and Twitter of political ads that from foreign actors. And so the government wanted to clean that out, and so you could only do election campaigning through traditional media, really, and not through using those platforms, which is so powerful. So I've also done a 180 where I'm like in favor of some regulation of social media in emerging markets, particularly in countries where education level is low and the dominance of the content is very high, right?
got it.
So a meme or a campaign or misinformation can get really dangerous really fast.
Got
Look,
you.
I know people. I know people in the CIA who work on this very issue, right, of creating ads and creating information to affect countries through social media. So this is not like an idle thing that I'm talking about when I talk about
Yeah,
it.
in fairness, I mean, America
Hello,
is
Michelle,
is
Michelin, and Michelle's joined us as well.
yeah,
Michelin,
exactly.
how do I say your name, Michelle? I keep getting it
Yeah,
wrong.
Michelle.
Sorry.
So
Michelle, yeah.
yeah. So Michelle,
Hello.
hey, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And what an absolute treat it is to have you here at this moment here, and every day, honestly, but particularly today because we're talking about India. One of the headlines is Facebook related, and we understand you might, big companies are complicated in what people are allowed to say as team members. So if you're not able to say anything, we understand that. But to whatever degree you are able to say anything, for example, TechCrunch and the Telegraph. Well, it's actually this is one that's quite widely reported today from TechCrunch, BuzzFeed, The Economic Times, The Guardian, Wall Street Journal, the Next Web, Gizmodo, Bloomberg, The Register, The Verge, and that's not to mention the Indian publications. But the issue is this hashtag Resign Modi. It says Facebook says it blocked all posts with Resign Modi hashtag in India due to a mistake, not due to the government order, and that the posts have now been restored. And we were did a poll when the room was much smaller, actually, when we were just getting started, and we said, how many people believe Facebook when they say that it was an honest mistake? Just to be fair, no, one person raised their hand for 1 second, so we're not even sure that was a real vote. And then there was about 30 or so folks who raised their hand to say they don't believe that this was an honest mistake. We've been diving into, and people have been sharing really interesting points from around the world, as only we can tend to do with a room like this, with an ensemble like this, where somebody shared stories from a Ugandan election and Tanzanian election type interference, or it wasn't an election, but a different issue, and COVID, and Facebook itself in India at the moment seems to be in a really precarious situation, particularly around COVID, where there was a headline 48 hours ago or so that India or Modi's team was asking Facebook and Twitter and social media in general to remove content, and they were complying. That was the headline. But today the headline is that this hashtag Resign Modi was blocked, and that Facebook's statement is, yes, that was an accident. It was a mistake, and it was not due to the government's request, and we've reinstated those 12,000 posts that were blocked, and that's where we're at today. But it would be fantastic if you were able to say anything on it. But we understand you might not be able
Yeah,
to.
I
Yeah.
think it's I think it's quite interesting because it shows how great of a reputation we have. The fact that it was only on one hands up in around the question on who actually believed Facebook. So I think I can maybe take one example of when something similar happened. That was the end SARS in Nigeria, where I think we happened to block 400 million posts by mistake because we thought it was COVID related, and it was purely automated. But when it comes to India, and this is public because obviously I can only speak to what's been
Yeah.
publicly shared in the media,
Right.
but we did make the decision to partner with the government to mitigate fake news because that's been, I think, the whole anti-vaccine fake news in India have been very detrimental to the population through WhatsApp and other family of apps. So we definitely decided to partner in order to help with some of those fake news spreading in our platform. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest headlines this week. In terms of that mistake, I do think it's a mistake because that happened in many other countries before, because obviously that is fully automated. So I would say maybe in an attempt of actually working on fake news in that country, this could have been flagged as a false positive as well. So that's all I could say. But obviously I can give more details
Okay.
beyond that perspective.
With that helps. Thank you for that. Um, other comments that on this bigger issue, because this is goes far beyond the Indian issue. This is We're talking about the conversation before you came in, Michelle. We were starting to get into a point that Charles raised, which was people are starting to change their perspective on this about the power of social networks, particularly in moments of elections, and what are we to do about it because they have such a tremendous influence. That we need to be mindful of, particularly as Mabwana is saying, in countries with lower education levels. Anyone have thoughts? I wanted to. It's such an interesting topic that I wanted to give everyone a chance to chime in. Oh, popcorn style. Feel free.
One
If
thing
I,
I
if
could
I,
maybe quickly add is that I guess people might be aware of it or not, but we have a huge public policy team that really partner, and we're aware of all elections. And in election time, we're trying to partner with government to make sure it works smoothly, because obviously there's a whole dogpiling issues and fake news and all of that, and it's orchestrated at a very high scale level. So we usually try to mitigate it in, I would say, in every country, although it's not really, the end consumer may not be aware of all of these efforts on the back end.
Right.
I would just say that one of the problems that I have with the way Facebook and Twitter apply their rules is how they seem to apply them always with a sort of left liberal consensus, and basically sort of, I would say, like the center left government consensus on social media. So, for instance, they don't. There have been a number of sort of fake stories in the Black Lives Matter issues, sometimes that have caused and triggered riots in various parts of the United States, and of course, all of that material is sort of left up. And that was, one of the things that so I attended a lecture by some people in the CIA in 2014, where they were talking about the role of social media in destabilizing countries. And some of the work that came out of that was later included in Martin Gurri's book called Revolt. I think it's Revolt of the Public. It's Gurri. And Gurri was a former CIA analyst who studied Cuba. And his sort of role was to read the newspaper every day. But obviously, that's sort of irrelevant in the modern age, right, where everybody's on social media. And so his basic contention is that the rate of information on the part of a lot of populations on social media is such that it destabilizes countries. And you could look at like the Arab Spring as a sort of obvious example of that. However you feel about the outcome of it, one could make the case that because the Mubarak regime in Egypt did control social media and satellite communication, especially with respect to Al Jazeera coming from Qatar, that basically that ultimately led to his regime collapsing. And I think we sort of think in the West that, like, our institutions are very, very strong, but you look at things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, you look at things like the way in which sort of hacked data was laundered through the election process in 2016 to help to elect Trump, which, by the way, was a candidate I favored. So I don't want to be
I've certainly changed my views on this. The free speech wing of the free speech party, which is how Twitter built itself, I don't think you can really have that in a modern context anymore. That social media has to, in some sense, come under state control. And so, what I would like to see at the part of Twitter and Facebook and others is actual genuine diversity, not just racial and ethnic diversity. But of course, they haven't done that.
I'll respond to you on this on. I'll challenge you on this one, Charles, and I think you and I know that we share a lot of views. That I think you're not threatened by me challenge you on this, and
Never threatened.
No, I know.
Always take it up.
I know. So here's my friendly challenge back: is that if Facebook, for example, in China, Zuckerberg made a substantial effort to get into China, would we agree on that?
Of course, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, right. So, and he did so knowing, and I think we would both agree that if he were to get into China, he knows damn well he would have to do it on their terms, right? Like, there's no ambiguity about that, really. So,
yeah, we're agreed there too. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
I think he actually tried to name his daughter. He tried to give the naming rights to his daughter to President Xi.
That's my we are of the same mind here on this point, which is he's willing to do what's necessary to get into China, and he morals, ethic questions be damned. It's just that's a pot of gold, and whatever it takes, let's get in there. And it is what it is. Okay, so if that's the case, then when we look at India. Similarly, the company, because it's so global, they just announced their quarterly results. They're up to nearly 3 billion users globally, which is tremendous. And so it essentially paints a picture that they are willing to do whatever the leading party is in that country at that time. So in the case of China, that party never changes. So that's quite an easy scenario. In the US, the parties do change from time to time, and India. So it might be the case that while the Republicans are or while one party's in charge, the Facebook takes the position, okay, well, they run the show in that country for the time being, so it will appear that they are more leaning in playing to one side or the other, given who's in charge at that time. And it's not necessarily that they are left or right, it's that they are catering to whoever's in charge.
Yeah, to make your point, to basically argue against myself, one could make the case that Facebook basically didn't want to ban Donald Trump, who was their biggest customer, right? And that one could look at the alliance that formed between Mark Zuckerberg, Jared Kushner, and Ben Shapiro, where basically Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire was sort of the preferred House conservative organ on Facebook.
Right.
One could make the case that basically, just as you say, they noted who was in power and they acted accordingly. I would just say, long run, these kind of things make me want to short Facebook, because I think that there are countries that I will never operate my businesses in as a matter of principle, and if it means I make less money, so be it.
Can you do that as a publicly traded company, though?
I think you have an obligation to first think of yourself as an American company, and those values come first if you're an American company. Now, I think that we have a right to criticize Mark Zuckerberg. Of course, it makes it somewhat difficult in the case of Zuckerberg, right? Because we can't really, buy a bunch of stock and kick him out of the company. I mean, he's essentially dictator for life, which is kind of different than, say, Twitter, where Dorsey could, in theory, be deposed.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting. But what are we to do of? Thankfully, we don't have to worry about an election anytime soon, but certainly this will be an incredible hot button issue in the months leading up to the next U.S. election, no doubt. Yeah.
I would say too that when you permanently ban people from social media platforms, I think that that's kind of unconscionable. Like, so in May, I'm coming up on 6 years of being banned for life from Twitter, and I've gotten divorced. I've had a child. I've started several companies, some of which are worth, one of which is worth $100 million plus. And so I just, I think the idea that you're banned for life for things you did in your 20s is probably like ethically suspect. I mean, the average murderer in the state of California, I think it's 9 years in prison. So I just think we need to be thinking very meaningfully about what are the paths to redemption, to grace, those sorts of things. And so when it comes to a narrow ban, for a specific period of time, I favor that kind of like quiet periods around elections. I think that that's probably a good idea.
Anybody else? Feel free to jump in.
I'm so with you on this because I've had some things happen to me on similar notes. Not so much in the public domain, but I support you 100% on this concept. Um, but I mean, I can't comment on these things on this platform on account of certain things that my close friends here know about me. But I support you 100% on what you're saying, man. This is a topic that's very close to my heart.
Well, I mean, the Middle East will be an interesting. The whole this applies everywhere. On this is something that unites people in every country, regardless of what side they are on.
No, I
Yeah.
would say too on the Middle East point. I mean, I know Faraz is somewhat limited in what he can say, but what I would just say is like in many cases, some of these regimes, it's a choice between a dictatorship and something far, far worse. And so in some cases, we are sort of limited. You know, like authoritarian government is not necessarily tyrannical. You know, government, and so sometimes politics is really choosing the lesser of two evils, and so sometimes I would favor, even in a tyrannical, even in an authoritarian government, restricting some of the information flows, just because what could come worse could be something like the Muslim Brotherhood, say, taking over Egypt, or some sort of thing to that effect. So I think it's a very challenging question, and I think social
No,
media
but you
almost
see,
always has to be under state
Charles,
control.
there's one thing here, and I'm sorry to interrupt, and this is one of my biggest fears with blockchain, right? Because when you've got criminal, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of digressing from the topic here, but one of my biggest fears about blockchain is criminal records going on blockchain, where criminal convictions are put on blockchain where those individuals are probably not criminal, and
Here's an interesting
that's
thought.
another major topic.
Well, so check this out. That's a wild thought that I have not had. Thank you for introducing it. There are websites, for example, mugshots websites, where they take these somewhat public information, which Charles, you're a great person to bring into this conversation on this point. These mugshot websites, for example, where they find kind of well hidden but public data like mugshots, and they publicize them on a website. And due to Google algorithms, people end up getting their Google alerts and their emails, and it says, "Hey, you are now on this new website called mugshots.com, and it's your mugshot when you got arrested, and it's very embarrassing." And of course, they do have a price to take it down, but it happens to be $500 or whatnot. And what if that's done in a more crypto style? That could become even a little more concerning. And similarly, Charles, on this, is there any considerations around, facial recognition apps and blockchain, or am I getting
No,
a
this,
little
this
too
is something I
fanciful?
think about. Yeah, this is something I think about quite often. So, I've worked on core technologies and helped my government in all kinds of ways. And there are things written about me on Wikipedia that were written by foreign actors to try to ruin my reputation. And I can go to Wikipedia, I can complain about it. I can say, actually, like, I was serving my country at the time. Could you help me on this? And of course, like, there's nothing I can do about it. So I believe in a right to rebuttal. So I believe that basically, if somebody Googles you, right, I should be able to look up, like, what does Tyler say about all the things that have been written about Tyler, right?
Right.
So I think you should be able to go and have, like, yes, I was convicted of a crime in 1996, right, and here are all the things I've done since, and I should be able to toggle onto Google and see Tyler's version of what's put up on Google about Tyler. I mean, in many cases, I think there's something kind of unconscionable about giving young people, particularly in their most hormonal times. I mean, you can't rent a car before you're 25 years old because your judgment is suspect, and yet you can have a Twitter account when you're like 13, 14 years old. So I do wonder about, like, what would it all mean to basically have a sort of panopticon in the case of Clearview in facial recognition generally. There are increasingly strict controls on facial recognition technology. I would be more in favor of loosening those restrictions, not out of just pecuniary interests. Of course, you should. I am a shareholder and I did start the company, so you should, disclaimers, disclaimers, disclaimers. But I would say, in the case of facial recognition, um, I favor, people who are responsible adults, having that. So I live in Texas. I'm one of 20 million Americans that have a concealed carry license. I understand that that's a controversial perspective for a lot of people in this room, given that they're from around the world. But I did go and get training on how to use a firearm. I hope to never use it. I'm more pacifistic by nature, but I don't understand why I live in a world in which I can own a gun after going through training, but I can't have facial recognition if, say, somebody breaks into my home. I have to go and go about it in that way. And I just think it's a very these questions get very complicated very quickly. But in the case of Facebook and in the case of some of these mega corporations, I don't think that they've given enough thought to these things. I think they're very much ad hoc, and they're very much a consequence of like what's going on in the news cycle, who's in charge and who's not. And maybe that's just the nature of things. It's sort of hard to have hard and fast rules. But when it comes to facial recognition or to genetics or to satellite technology, I think that the state has a compelling interest in basically making sure that these technologies are strongly regulated.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Okay. New headlines. Anyone have something they'd like to share? A different topic. Feel free. Yeah. Beamlek?
Yeah. Bumluck. Hi.
Bumluck. Hey, welcome.
Yeah. I think first time on this stage, at least while Tyler, you and Cal have been hosting, and I just want to say thank you for hosting this room. It's don't know what I've been doing on Clubhouse before finding you guys. So really appreciate it.
Wow.
Welcome, and thank you for the kind words. But as you know, if you join us regularly, it's people like yourself that make the magic in this room happen. So it's great to have you
here. Yeah. So earlier, I think we mentioned maybe talking about a big tech company quarterly reports, and Tuesday Google reported after hours and went vertical. And one of the things that they said in their report was that they saved, I think, almost a little over $250 million from expenses from company promotions and stuff like that. And in the LA Times, the headline is Google is saving about $1 billion per year as a result of employees working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who's a software engineer, started full-time 2019, I haven't actually experienced working on site for a full year, and since March 2020, it's just been working from home. I can't imagine going back to on site anytime soon. But a bunch of tech companies are thinking about doing hybrid. But Google has huge real estate both in the East Coast and the West Coast, and I don't know why they would want to go back into on site or even in the case of Apple, create new campuses,
right?
When it's just kind of been working for now a whole year. And I don't know. Yeah,
it's a great question, and we have, and this is one of these great questions we can open up to the audience because a lot of us are in similar situations. And just to paint a bigger picture here, Apple is working on it secretly, one of the regular listeners here just shared that Apple's going to, yesterday he shared Apple's going to 4x the size of their already existing campus in Austin, which hasn't really been reported anywhere yet, and that we only can get access to that because it's somebody who's on the ground there in Austin. And Paul, who joins us nearly each day. So look forward to a future headline on that. But that does imply that they are expecting people to show up to this new campus office in Austin and elsewhere. Spotify has taken a full-on global forever work wherever you want in the world, which Thailand and Bali are in a big competition to see how many how many of those Spotify employees will end up in Bali or Thailand. And I'm working with the government in Thailand on our side on that opportunity. But there's a lot of companies that have taken forever work wherever you want positions, and there's a very few companies taking an insistent everyone come back to the office perspective, and there's a lot in between. I would love to do a poll in this audience of who plans to who would like to go back to the office and who would like the option to not go back to the office. What do you think of that, Cal?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So just to color this conversation,
you'll have to do it.
Yeah,
you'll have to do a third option, and that's a hybrid.
Okay. Oh, right. All right, we're gonna do for the first time ever. You've got three choices. Choice number one will be
People
you.
force people into one or the other. Let's see how people really decide when they really have to. I think that the third option, of course, everyone's going to pick the hybrid option, right? Because that's
Okay.
the most, force them to choose.
Yeah. Everyone will optimize for flexibility. You're right. So, if you had to pick one, would you prefer to never go back to the office or go back to the office? Yes.
That's how I would structure it.
Okay.
Yes, because force
Let's
people to choose.
Yeah, because if you give them the flex option, everyone chooses that. You're right. Good point. So, if you had to choose between going back to the office or never going back to the office, but keeping the same job, of course, please raise your hand if you would choose never going back to the office. So we've got 7, 15, 30, 40,
Wow.
50, 55, 50, 60, keep going, 60 going once, 61, 61 going twice, 63, 64, 65 going three times.
64. We picked a 64.
I saw 65, so let's call it
Okay,
65.
65.
Hands down, please. And now raise your hands if you would, if you had to choose, you would go back to the office and go back to life before COVID style. Raise your hands now. 20, 30. Can we get 40? Do I see 40? Going once. 33, 34, 35, 35. Going twice. 35, 35. Going three times. 35. So, wow, 2-1 on that, basically. People would prefer to not go back to the office. Interesting, 2-1. So,
Tyler.
Yes.
Now do a poll. Who identifies as an extrovert and who identifies as an introvert?
Funny enough, because Swedes are notoriously introverts, and Spotify says you don't have to come back to the office. But here's the point I wanted to make on this. Spotify is
By the way, by definition, the people that are not on Clubhouse basically voted that they're actually not probably at home right now. Who knows?
Right. So here's another interesting point. Spotify is a very data-driven company, and they look at performance and metrics all day long. They are an incredibly smart data company, and they crunch the numbers, and they are being Swedish. Swedish companies, by the way, men and women get many months of work from home paid when they have a child, both the mother and the father, and they actually took that from their Swedish roots into internationally. So even Spotify employees outside of Sweden get that benefit because the Swedes are really into happy employees. Like the Swedes fundamentally, deeply, all of Swedish society is all about making your employees as happy as possible. They deeply believe in that, almost without exception. So it's interesting to see a data company who wants to see their employees happy, have probably done polls like this repeatedly. They look at all the metrics and data and analytics, and they decide, you know what, no one ever has to come back to the office again. There is, of course, perhaps a PR angle to that, a marketing angle to that, and an opportunistic angle that they can now hire from people from India and Ukraine and lower cost talent all over the place without having to import them into Sweden, which is notoriously difficult to do. So there is all of that.
I would say just one thing on this point. So I hire a lot of mothers to work for my companies, and particularly mothers that stay at home with their children. I have not found there to be a productivity loss in this regard, and I think that there's a lot of very intelligent women around the world who would prefer staying home with their children and don't necessarily want to do the
Amen.
9 to kind of thing. And I think that's probably true of men too. I just don't have as much experience with stay-at-home dads to that extent. But I think that there's something like I think we'll look back at basically this period where people were working, 70, 100 hours in the office. I think we'll look back at it as kind of a grotesque, barbaric kind of thing. And I think particularly, those of us who like want to, like having mothers around, mothers with young children around in my companies has actually made the companies very, very, basically attentive to to the marketplace in a way that I never would have thought. So I think there's all sorts of like knock-on benefits here.
Yeah.
And I think from a tax-based question, though, that's really where I kind of find myself wondering. Like, I mean, I've had a lot of people move to Texas. We have no income tax, no corporate tax, really. And I do wonder, like, long run, how a lot of these, particularly in the United States, how a lot of these states that can survive when they have people working remotely.
Yeah, it's a great point. And you also, and by the way, it might be a way around ageism to some degree. If you have people applying remotely without ever showing up at the office and they've got years of experience and talent, there is a bit of an ageism thing happening within tech that this might help
On both
avoid.
sides,
Yeah.
by the way, on
I'm
both.
actually curious to get a
Yeah.
perspective from people from our other parts of the world too, right?
Yeah, because
We have a
God knows Cal would love to work at a startup, but
yeah, yeah, like
so yeah,
Just ableism. Think about all the different type. I mean, all the things that companies, not that they don't have to accommodate for, but that they no longer have to spend money changing facilities for.
I just wanted to chime in as well. So as you know, Tyler, since you're Spotify guy and I have to rep my SiriusXM and Pandora side of
do it.
things. I think, Tyler, for us, and we are sort of hell bent on this whole hybrid, not, competing with Spotify and work from home. But what I will say, and this is strictly just my opinion only, what I think is happening here between the two is a simple legacy thinking of this is people that have been in the company since inception. They believe in coming into the office. They want to come into the office, and really that's that. So it has to be a hybrid. Versus, I think a lot of new companies out there have a more, they're ready to roll with the punches and they're open to a more work from home environment. I could be completely wrong, but I kind of feel like for us, that's kind of what's going on here is they sort of have that old legacy mentality.
Yeah, to Cal's point, the international perspective would be super interesting in this because to me, this could be a huge benefit to India, East Europe, potentially Africa, Southeast Asia. So please
I
do chime
found
in.
that the time zone thing matters a lot. Being in the
Sure,
right time zone is very helpful. So, like that can be kind of useful as well.
sure. Yeah, the Indians got to wake up a little earlier. Yeah. Yeah. What's up, Jordan?
Also the contracts and the taxation point as well. So if you live in a different state in America compared to where the company is headquartered, I'm pretty certain the taxation rules may be different. Correct me if
Right.
I'm wrong on
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. Oh, well, by the way, there are startups now that are specifically addressing that point, which is if you have a truly diverse team internationally and all the different tax headaches of onboarding, creating a team of employees, not contractors, but employees who are really distributed internationally, and all the different currencies, all the different legal loopholes, headaches, and hula hoops. There are companies that are getting well funded right now in Silicon Valley specifically to address that and make it rather seamless and painless.
And just like to go on that, saving aspects for for the company. I mean, I don't know. For me, $250 million is quite a lot. And so just being able to apply those funds to maybe higher salaries or different projects. I don't know that I feel like that's I like that side of the opportunity cost more.
Yep. I guess one way to
Just to add,
go ahead, Michelle.
yeah, just to add something to that. For us, it's pretty much having, well, we're not going to go, at least not yet, into the hybrid mode. So it's either or. And what's pretty interesting is that the teams that may want to be working from home now have the concern around career growth. What if half of the team decide to go to the office? And I mean, I think a lot of the C-level will work from the office because that's what it seems to be. Now I have concerns more around, okay, how do I continue to grow my career when, let's say, 90% of your team decide to go back to the office and not yourself? So it turns out to be a lot more tricky than we expected initially. And now there's also the cross-border remote work where you could decide to relocate. Let's say in Europe, if you're based in UK initially, you can decide to move to Portugal, where your contract will be adjusted to. You're going to have a local contract. So now people are no longer sure. They kind of need to reconsider it, and it's not as straightforward as we were expecting.
Yeah.
There's also a major security issue too for those of us who work in industries that are subject to espionage,
Right.
which I think is something that's also not really always talked about here,
Just
which I
it,
think
but
is
yeah,
useful.
the intellectual property issue in general. Yeah.
Well, the issue, of course, is like if you're transmitting everything over email or you're transmitting things. I mean, there are very few truly secure ways of transferring knowledge across, basically the internet. And so there are oftentimes cases where I've seen startups where they work remotely, but then they get together like once a month or whatever to work on the really sensitive stuff where they're face to face. And I think that that's something that I think could be kind of interesting, but I do think the hybrid model is probably here to stay moving forward for a lot of different industries, and I wonder what it's going to do to commercial real estate. I have friends basically in commercial real estate in New York where they're getting like 10-15% occupancy in their buildings, and that's just not sustainable in major cities.
Right. Yep.
We
Quick
gave up.
question.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry. I was just going to say, Charles, we gave up an office in New York City at Sirius. So we already cut down one full office. So I guess that's could be the wave of the future. Who
What's
knows?
happening to that building now, Amanda? Like, do you know? I mean, what's
Well,
happening?
we're only a floor. So, I mean, somebody else will take it over, I'm sure. But for us, I mean, we eliminated it. So I'm not sure, again, how companies are going to go. But we have four offices. So now we're down to three in the city. And that's not including Pandora. This is only speaking from Sirius side of things.
Hmm. Yep.
Tyler, Donna here. Could I bring up
Of course.
an aligned business? So it's not like business like Spotify, but how about education? I mean, education, even if you do a hybrid, I think that there's been a lot of conversation, and I know that you've been involved in some of it in Cal, but there's been a lot of conversation outside of Clubhouse about, I'm a student and I'm willing to. I want you to unbundle the package. I want it like more like a Chinese menu. I want one from column A. I don't want to go to the swimming pool, and I don't want to take part in the sports. I want the library. I'm willing to have part of my courses online. I want that model for 20,000. I don't want the $80,000 model. And so I think that we're going to see an unbundling of the services of universities because they've gotten there was an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day about the escalating prices of universities, and also now we're seeing many retrench in New York. In New York, the new school is giving up a lot of the property that they either bought or rented and retrenching and have fired a lot of people. Even tenured professors are not secure there. So I think that the education as a business, which became a huge business, is going to see a very serious restructuring, partially because of the look that students have had at what they might be able to forego if you gave me a reduction in prices. Thank you, Donna.
Well, thank you, Donna. There's another point on this, which is two things: the cost of living, like I was saying about Thailand and Bali, trying to attract all of these people who work at companies that are going to be Twitter. By the way, is also, and I believe it was Stripe or Coinbase or one of the big fintech companies have taken this, work wherever you want in the world type policy, assuming you adjust to the time zone, of course. But the cost of living in Thailand is 25% of the U.S. and you also get instantly if you stay out as an American, and very few Americans know this. I'm surprised how I rarely meet Americans who know this. But if you live outside of America, 330 days of the year, you instantly get $100,000 tax discount, which at a 35% tax rate is $35,000 instantly off your tax bill, which is $100 per day you save by waking up outside of America's borders rather than inside. And that $100 a day goes incredibly far in Thailand, actually. So you're essentially being paid to live in Thailand rather than paying to live in Thailand.
I tried very hard, by the way, during the Trump years to reduce that, Tyler. Just so you know, to keep Americans back in the U.S.
Lucky for me, you didn't
But
manage to do that.
sorry, I'm sorry that I'm grateful that at least somebody's putting it to good use.
Yes, and I'm just amazed how it's not common knowledge to Americans, because the Americans who I have told that to, usually it sticks in their head for a while, and a few months later they're asking me about other follow-up questions about relocating. But
How many days is that again, Tyler?
Yeah, exactly. 330. You can stay inside the US 30 days a year and still get the automatic discount.
The IRS, by the
200.
way, has a very hard time auditing the 330. By the way,
Correct.
just for those who are wondering,
True.
and so there's a lot of people that sort of like that basically push the limits of that, and the
Yep.
IRS has a very hard time tracking those people down. Just in
Correct.
case people are wondering about these things.
That's true. Yeah.
Although the flip side to remember about this is that like it's only because the US has very draconian laws about income. Most nations except for the US, if you earn income outside of their home country, it's completely untaxed, period. It is only the US that insists on getting a piece of everything that an American earns, no matter where around the world. It's just the first 100K outside the US is untaxed. And then everything thereafter, it starts from zero.
Precisely
Whereas
right.
if you were a Chinese national, right? I mean, you don't owe Chinese income taxes for any money you earn outside of China. And so because of that, actually, internationally, opening up a bank account is especially a pain in the ass if you have a American passport versus any other passport. A lot of investment firms, smaller firms, would just simply not open it because of the compliance and reporting requirements that come from having an American as a client. I mean, obviously, the big international banks will accept it, but smaller will be like, yeah, you know what, it's too much paperwork for us deposit this size. We're just not going to open it for you. Just as a small counterpoint. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's just that's one of the costs.
Yes. You're
I
exactly
think it's
right.
important to point out as well, Tyler, a lot of the big tech companies sort of early last summer talked about reduction in pay for those that worked remotely long time.
Yeah, there'd be a question of percentage, right? Because like I said, the cost of living in Thailand, just on a flat cost basis, it's about 25 to 30% of cost of living in the U.S., notwithstanding the $100,000 tax discount. So I'm wondering if they're going to discount your salary by 10 or 20 or even 30%. I would be fine with any of those if I was working. But if it's 50%, then it might cause me some pause. Yeah.
I think there's an interesting question too around productivity of labor. Like I have a guy who works for me now that we pay 2.5 times the prevailing wage for his job, but he does the work of about 18 to 20 guys. And so I do wonder like how long companies can continue to basically allow like laggard performers on their on their sheets, on their balance sheets, because everybody knows that there are A players that really are like driving the company forward.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that we haven't really gotten into, like a world in which people are more rated on productivity versus like salaries or hourly rates.
Great point. And how do those A players perform at the office versus out? And just tracking the performance. I mean, that is some of the tools that are being built right now, in addition to the startups that I mentioned that are trying to streamline creating, legal team building, internationally. There are other tools that are specifically aimed at tracking performance of remote team members and quantifying who's having increased
And
productivity.
how would you even build such a product? I mean, I have a guy who works for me who he works out most of the day, and then he spends most of his day thinking about writing code, and then for like 45 minutes he writes flawless code, but it's better than everybody else that I've had work for me. So like how do I rate such a person, right? It's like there's a certain sense in which the measurement tools themselves are very hard to measure, particularly in frontier businesses or in businesses that are sort of out there on the frontier curve.
But here's the dirty secret: is you've got some of these superstar players. There's been some really interesting stories where they're double dipping and working at two companies simultaneously. There was a somewhat infamous case of somebody working at Facebook and Google simultaneously on full remote, somewhere out of Eastern Europe. So it's
Tyler, somebody at one of my recent large companies that I worked for, the person before me had 7 jobs, and they were wondering why they could never get a hold of him. He left a patent attorney. So
was it at all 7, or what happened? I mean, what happened to the guy?
Well,
they fired him and they fired him. It happened right before I came on board, which made them try to micromanage me. But it was a big legal team. They fired him. He threatened to sue, and so
as attorneys are going to attorney, right?
Oh my God! But 7, I mean, in big companies,
Yep.
yeah. So he was literally turning in nothing. I think he had farmed it out to again Eastern European sub lawyers.
Yep.
And you can tell when that happens. There's just a different quality of work, obviously.
Sure. I'll give you a little tip. Anytime you hire a lawyer in Thailand, really only Thais are allowed to do law in Thailand. But you get people who show up here and they don't speak Thai and they go to a white guy or gal posing as a lawyer, I got news for you. They're delegating it down to a real Thai lawyer. So that happens all the time. Yeah, interesting point.
Happens in translation space too. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be the translator, and you're supposed to be only based in America because these are government jobs, and therefore there's such a thing as a level of security. And then some of the colleagues that I know, they subcontracted to people in the Philippines because they are paid 1 cent to the word or something like that. But I wanted to go back to Donna's point of education. Two things. One, yes, the education probably cost. It's going to go down because you can now pick and choose whichever one you want to get into, and also cost of living. You don't have to go to Boston, Massachusetts to be educated in. Is that Harvard that is there, or MIT? I don't know. So in any case, but there are people, even though they are sort of grown up, but they're young people. They need that exposure to networking and socializing for them to establish their next step in life. So for college, it may not be as good an idea to have them always out of the school campus. And then second thing too, and probably this is obvious, but with young children, I think it's really important that they have an in-school. So educators should be going back to school. That's my point there. But the thing that I wanted to raise also was with Filipinos, for example. These are remote workers, so it doesn't matter what time of day it is. They're already used to doing this. They will be awake when Americans are awake because they're in the call centers, or when Europeans are awake because they're in the call centers. So it's the opposite time zone. But the other thing, though, the thing with that is they're working in a call center. Therefore, the technology is up to par. But if you're working from home, then your internet might be shit. So it might not work that way. That's it.
Diva, do you happen to know a company in Manila called TaskUs?
No, sorry, no. But
okay.
I know some others. But what about them?
They're friends of mine from Santa Monica that grew the company to be, now I think they're up to 40,000 team members in Manila. And they work for all of the big social media companies, and they handle when people flag things in, say, for example, Clubhouse, when you try and flag a conversation as being, that there was a problem in a room, or if you're on a social network and you flag somebody or some conversation as being hate speech or racist or whatever, generally it ends up at TaskUs. They're doing a lot of the human moderation for a lot of these platforms, and growing incredibly quickly, as you can imagine.
Which is necessary, because AIs may not be able to distinguish between what is fuckery and what is not really
correct.
fuckery.
That's
Sorry about language.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and
they
be
call themselves,
be silent.
The whole category is called artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Cool. I got to go and, because I'm going to go back to driving. Thank you.
Go ahead, Diva. Was that Charles that was saying? Yeah.
I was just going to say, generally, so I IQ test most of the people who work with me. Unfortunately, I'm somewhat limited in that I can't really hire from anywhere. I can only kind of really hire from Five Eyes countries, given the work I do. But I would just say, I increasingly find people who are 17, 18, 19 years old who they might as well be dogs, on the internet. I don't really care where they went to college, so long as they're intelligent. And I think that that's going to be a leading indicator. It's going to be something that's going to be increasingly common, especially as we kind of learn more, about people's genetics, and so we can kind of tell how intelligent they are, what their personality traits are from their genetics. I think that gets very exciting very quickly from an employment perspective. And I think just in general, when it comes to the college systems, so my father was class of 1975 at Harvard. The number of seats at Harvard have stayed the same, even though the U.S. population has trebled. And of course, there's international competition for those seats now. And so there's really a sense in which I don't think that education will be sort of unbundled, because it's a positional good, right? Where people, they sort of flex that they went to Stanford or Harvard or whatever. If you look at Clubhouse bios, for instance, you'll see people often mention what universities they went to as a sort of indicator of their overall intelligence. Nobody would actually go and put their IQ or the amount of code that they've shipped on GitHub, for instance.
Not yet. We will get there, because that's the metric. Hold on. Wait. You just had Wait, you just had a fantastic idea. I would absolutely love if that was included in people's bios so I could determine who to invite on stage.
Well, what I'd like to do, by the way, is I'd like to have a clubhouse room just of redheads where we all just submit our genetic data and then we could just talk amongst ourselves and the rest of you can pay to join or to listen in. But that's my dream is the
Tell
redhead
us how that
utopia on the
experiment.
internet.
I'm
Tell
feeling
us how that
discriminated
experiment goes
against.
once you've done it. Yeah.
I will.
Once
That's on
you
my to-do list.
Very funny.
I wanted to jump in after you, Charles, because it makes me laugh because that's exactly at the top of my bio because I went back to school right now, which
Yep.
has been a
Perfect. I won't hold it
killer.
against you for going to Harvard. Don't worry.
But no, Charles, but I wanted to piggyback kind of off of what you were saying, but take it to a different level. So, something we noticed going back to school, it seems a lot of us that were in the post graduate programs, we're perfectly fine with doing this remote and everything. It kind of sucks because we can't do our labs and do things on campus, which is a major bummer. But we're a lot of us, because we're so many years in our career, we're completely fine with it. We have not a lot of qualms of not being on campus. But I will tell you, and I'm sure you're privy to this too, Charles, that many of the undergrads at Harvard, I mean, tons and tons deferred because they absolutely want to go on campus. So that I think it depends university to university, but that's something we definitely saw. Whereas us established, we're like, well, we'd like to be there, but whatever. As long as I can get my degree and finish up, I'm totally cool with it. But just wanted to chime in on what
Yeah.
I saw.
I would say your wealth is kind of a function of your intelligence, your network, and your capacity for risk, right? And your and luck, obviously. But like, if you don't have access to the networks, I mean, if then you don't really get the benefit of some of these elite institutions, and so therefore you're probably less willing to spend the 80 grand or so.
I want to welcome. Hey, Jeremiah, could you jump up on stage, please? Because we haven't, and it's been about 2 or 3 weeks since we went over the founding origin story of tech news around the world, which you play a significant role in, actually. So, and I wanted, if you could give an update on just what you've been up to in Clubhouse, beyond inspiring the Tech News Club and the Tech News around the world. Welcome, Jeremiah.
Hey, thanks, Tyler. I'm just catching up here, just on my morning break.
Nice.
Thanks. It's good to see you,
You
and I
too.
love your videos from the beach. So,
Yeah,
so
we're
you wanted an
yeah,
update on what I've been working on? Is
yeah,
that what you're
exactly.
asking?
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm an advisor to Rally. That's been consuming a lot of my time and, frankly, attention. It's so interesting. And many creators are launching their own creator coin. And last week we did something cool. We actually created a private coin gated room here in Clubhouse. So you could only enter the room if you owned my own personal coin. And so that's the first
Wow.
premium paid room in
Well, that's
Clubhouse ever.
and this is why I love Jeremiah. He's like as usual 6 months ahead of everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just fascinating to see, like, can you use crypto and social audio to help creators monetize? So we're just trying to crack the code
yeah.
on that. So that's what I've been working on. Um,
That's
I'm working
that's
on some research.
that's plenty. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, we're also working on research on the different types of what are the common biometrics. Totally different topic, by the way.
Yeah,
What are the common biometrics for humans, and what will they be in the next year? Just thinking back 5 years ago, like the pedometer, like how many steps did you do was like the
right.
thing, but that's
Fitbit.
not really a great metric for multiple reasons. Now people are, the current biometric is heart rate variability,
Ah,
or
yeah.
heart rate.
Yep.
But the future will be, something else.
Yeah.
Whoop is trying to do
Glucose
like sleep
levels. Yeah,
data,
yeah.
glucose levels. It could be a true metabolic rate could be one.
Yep.
Uh, also true BMI,
Yep.
or body composition. We need better sensors to do that.
Which could these could be super helpful in COVID. It turns out there seems to be strong correlations between BMI and COVID. Yeah.
Yes, and it's a very sad story, and it also relates to socioeconomic
Amen.
status as well,
Yep.
which is very sad.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe we'll see new data on breath rate. Breath rate in COVID has become so important.
Yep.
So that's another area I'm looking at is like tech wellness. And I run the wellness club
Yep.
here in Clubhouse.
Yep.
But overall, like, I'm not sure about Clubhouse. It seems like there's been a real drop off in attendance. Are you seeing this?
I have. I follow. You're a data. I mean, for folks who don't know, Jeremiah's been in this game from the beginning. and he's always 6 months ahead of everybody since going back almost 2 decades now. And one of the few people I really look forward to and listen to very closely, as just for the reasons you're all hearing now. You're right, and you're one of the few. I've been saying this very closely to a few people, that I consider close, like Cal here. We've been talking about that, so it's not a surprise to me at all that you would raise this point. Because I'm looking
Yeah.
at the data that you are, I'm sure, and it's concerning. And this is why we brought it up the last couple days here in this room, which is we are now splitting off into, for example, Michael has just created under the tech news club. We're now doing different rooms, like the India tech room, the VR tech room, the crypto tech room, just to and
Oh,
Ami,
that's
by the
good.
way, just did a crypto tech room for ladies. And we wanted to make sure
Great.
that Donna's part of that, because there are crypto rooms in Clubhouse, of course, but
Yes, many.
there's notably a need for more women in crypto. I mean, it's just an outstanding
Yeah,
point, right?
the stats I've seen are like 20 to 40% of crypto holders are women.
Yeah,
We need to get up to parity.
yeah.
It's just really not good.
There's
I mean, that's one of the things I'm working on too. So one of the creators at Rally is Christina Holder. I think you guys all know the Women in Business Club here, right? It's this, top 10 club here.
mm-hmm.
So she has her own coin, the Woman coin. It's spelled WOMXN. You can find it on Rally. And she gives it away. She hosts education sessions on crypto. So I'm working with her, trying to get her exposure and deals as well. She's fantastic. So
Yeah.
we definitely need that. And I even, thinking I have daughters,
Yep.
no sons. So, I purchased some crypto, which I'll give to them when they're adults as
Yep.
well. And just, making sure that they're in the game.
Yeah, and we're trying to encourage people to become more creators on the platform, so that there's more good content on Clubhouse all the time, so that people can keep their habit of opening the app whenever they've got kind of some spare cycles. Because I worry that if people open the Clubhouse app and they don't find something they like, they could quickly break their habit of turning to Clubhouse as their default kind of spare cycles, as it is.
Well, that's why I'm seeing many of the creators on Clubhouse starting Twitter Spaces.
I
Right?
know.
I'm seeing
I
the migration is actually significant.
I know. Yeah, and Scoble's an old mutual friend of ours, and he's living in Twitter Spaces lately. It's interesting to watch how this will develop. It literally in the next 10 days or so, because I think Twitter Spaces is planning to do their official launch in the next by the 14th.
Yep.
So it's going to be
I would
interesting.
continue to do both.
Yeah.
So I'm going to place bets in both.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be limited to Clubhouse only.
Yep. And I think we had the conversation where I did that little test where it turns out if you have a small stage of speakers, you can do both simultaneously. Have you tried
Oh,
that?
right.
Yeah, it works.
I haven't tried that, but yeah, that makes sense.
The key is all the
yeah.
speakers need to use AirPods. That's the key. But you can have both
Right.
apps
So you don't
open
get the
simultaneously on one phone. All the speakers only need one phone. They can have both apps open, but the key is they need to use AirPods. That's the whole secret sauce. If they try and take their AirPods out, it'll only work in Clubhouse and not in Twitter. Anyway, but I wanted
cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to take the opportunity to say Jeremiah is very much the reason that Tech News Around the World even exists, because I was in his room when he was having it was back when the Facebook and Australia media were kind of butting heads in a very big way. It was the biggest story of the day by far. And as a matter of fact, it was the story of the week, where you had the Rupert Murdoch media and the Australian media basically using the Australian government as a proxy to put new regulation on Facebook that they would have to pay to include links from the media companies on Facebook. And Facebook said, yeah, go screw yourself, we're not going to play that game. And they blocked all the media in Facebook as a result, and that caused a follow-up wave of brouhaha the next days. And then I go into Jeremiah's room, and he's got some Australian journalists in his room talking about this. and then he had made me a mod, and somebody from Facebook was in the audience and DM'd me, and so I brought her up on stage. She worked in the media team. She pointed out that her boss was in the audience. His name's David. He is like sort of a regional boss for the media team. It happens to cover Australia. He jumps up on stage, and they had one of the most amazing Clubhouse magical moments I've still ever seen. And what occurred to me at that moment, I mean, well, first of all, they talked it out. They even hugged it out. It was a beautiful exchange that could only happen when you've got all the actual real actors on stage together on a Clubhouse stage talking it out. And I realized, wow, this this format that Clubhouse deserves a lot of credit for pioneering is truly magical, and especially in the context of the fact that this is the biggest tech news story in the world at the moment. Everyone's talking about this, and here are the actual people on stage together talking it out directly in a way that I never could imagine it happening. And I thought, wow, that is the future of news right there, where you've got both sides of the parties able to come to a neutral middle platform and talk it out in a very civil way with an engaged audience, a smart audience. Truly fantastic, and that's what inspired this whole thing, actually. So I have to thank you again, Jeremiah, for
That's
keeping
a
me
great
inspired.
story. I didn't know that was the spurring moments.
Oh yeah.
That's great, Tyler. So you're going to keep this going?
Oh yeah. We do it twice a day now. Click on the title of the room. You'll see our schedule. We do not only twice a day here, but because nearly everybody on this stage right now, it joins us every day on stage, and a lot of the people in the audience join every day. We now do 2 different time zones, essentially. And now, starting about a week ago, started Victoria, just near you there, is doing the tech news around VR, which is about to, I believe, I think you'll agree, is about to have its kind of tipping moment. And hopefully Apple
And
will
you're
announce.
using the same club? It's all under the
Yeah,
same club?
exactly. Yeah, like, and then the crypto club that we did earlier today, which Ami and other folks on stage were part of, and then there's a AI and robot love topics, and then
Tech News Canada, Tech News India,
Tech
and
News.
we're also going to spin out rooms just at the end of one if there's a big topic as well.
Right. So, all thanks to you, buddy. So,
No, I don't want to take any credit for your hard work.
No. Yeah,
well, you can take the revenues,
well.
split revenues.
Yeah. Well, if we could create
revenues,
if there was only a coin, Jeremiah, that we could somehow tap into, that.
Yeah, you could, right? The Matty Mo has the art coin. You might know him as Marcel. They're doing, and they drop NFTs here in Clubhouse, and they're also doing classes using the art coin. They're doing really well, like really well.
What's the name of the rooms they do, or the club?
The Most Famous Artist.
Cool.
TMFA.
I will spend some time there.
I think you know Matty, right?
I don't think I do. I will. But I'll be on your recommendation. I got a note here to jump into that room next time. I'll be keeping an eye out for it for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you again. I just wanted.
All right, cool.
It was a unique opportunity to catch everybody up on the origin story here and the little room refresh. But that's what it's all about. We open the stage to everyone from all over the world, and welcome to that point. Thank you for your insight, Arnold. And welcome, Arvin. I think it might be your first time. Good to see you back, Jordan. Dan, I've seen you in the audience, but it's great to see you on stage. And
Tammy's rejoined us.
Yeah, a lot of new folks on stage today as well. So don't be shy, because that's what this room is all about. Is we take advantage of the fact of people like Monica, who brings us these absolute gems of insights of what's happening in India, in fintech, and with this issue around Facebook currently. Lamis drops wisdom bombs from the Middle East of what's really going on there on a somewhat daily basis. Paul is our spy in residence who goes over to the new Tesla factory to keep us updated on when those cars are going to be coming off the floor. The new cyber trucks are actually only a few weeks away, which nobody else seems to know, but Paul does because he lives across the street from it, and etc. So it's just been an absolute joy, all of us getting together as geeks from around the world, giving really nice insights, both professionally and from our own geography. And that's how we do it. I have a lot of headlines to jump into that we can all chime in on, but I wanted to open the floor to anyone who has something to share. You can flash your mic, or it's really popcorn style as it is.
I think Amy has something.
Go ahead,
Hey,
Amy.
Tyler. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do that that room this this morning.
Yeah.
I think Linda was amazing as a mod, and we pretty much ran for 3 hours straight. And it was a really amazing experience, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
There was one interesting piece of tech news that I was actually going to share right now, which has to do with...
Before that, let us just land what a success it was.
Well, thank you. It's like, we got to celebrate. We have to celebrate.
But just...
What's the name of the room? Sorry, May.
The name of the room is under the tech news, and it was Crypto News Bites. And what the first session today was just really about getting the structure down, which I think it was a little bit, some people maybe didn't understand it simply because the tech newsroom ran over. So some people came in late, and I had structured a little bit of how it was going to work, and I think some people might have felt it was, they might not have understood how the format was, because it was done as an interview style Q&A. And then the second half, which ended up to be 2.5 hours, was really about allowing questions, but the stage stayed female. And the stage stayed female, and what we did is we allowed men to come up and ask their question, but after they were done, we moved them back to the audience. So we took people from the audience one by one if they were men, but we always gave precedent to women. And it was super fascinating because I got some really beautiful compliments from the ladies on stage, and Cheryl was amazing. I love Cheryl. She's got this great way of finding things and also challenging in such a kind way, and I love that about her, so thank you for that. And there was a young lady in there, Zara, from Sweden. Wow, she was just an ultimate badass. Like, I was like, yes. And then there was another woman who is from the US who's in cybersecurity, so we had some really strong women on stage, but super, super holding space for women.
It's probably one of the most insightful discussions on the
I know, Cal was lurking.
Yeah, I was just at the bottom lurking. I was with my dog. But I just want to call out something, the content that you came out with in terms of the transformation of the fashion industry. McKinsey should be writing notes, okay? And they should be putting a thing out there. So this is stuff that, because it's out there and it's based on new technology and the supply chain issues. You were talking about transformation of the fashion industry that you can't find in a McKinsey report, all right?
Do you know what's really funny, Cal? Could I interrupt for a moment? Because it's a super interesting statement.
It's just about you.
Well, no, it's very interesting because you brought up the M word, which I choose to not bring up since my MBA, because I was actually sourced from LinkedIn by McKinsey Amsterdam, and the only reason they didn't bring me to interview me is because I didn't speak Dutch. I'm glad that we had that silence in the room, because that's exactly what I had. I'm like, wait a second, this is a little bit odd. But McKinsey trained us for 2 sessions inside my MBA, which we could have another nauseam MBA conversation about that. But I think that you just hit the nail on the head. When McKinsey and BCG and these massive strategy agencies, I think they're also, the cogs in the wheel are a little bit unoiled. And the challenge is how do you disrupt those agencies as well? Because strategy is also changing. So that was what was really amazing inside the space. And actually, I'm going to speak on stage for the Fashion Collective next Monday. And it's a private, the members don't get shown because they're bringing in names that do not want to know that they're on Clubhouse. But they're on Clubhouse, and I'm going in to present and have a conversation around crypto and fashion and luxury fashion, because one of the things I couldn't mention was about Ariné. And Ariné is what Louis Vuitton, Richemont, and Prada are creating, the Aura blockchain consortium. And this is the same thing, Cal, that SAP did. SAP was starting FMS, and they were trying to do it on their own, and they realized, hey, we can't do this ourselves. We have to get the fashion industry involved. And that's when they created the Fashion Consortium with Federated and May Merchandising in New York City. So all I did is take that narrative and say, could we apply that same logic there and pull it in here? And the unique part about it is that the information that Cheryl pulled up, it was already in vogue. That was something I already knew about 2 months ago. And this is what Jeremiah, I'm grateful that he's in the audience as well, super grateful that you've enabled Tyler and Cal to kind of bring this up more. Because the unique part about it is the ability to realize where is the news that's coming down from deep in the rabbit hole. Once it hits a mainstream news or magazine outlet, it's old news. So one of the things I'm doing within the Crypto Daily, the Crypto Bites, is finding the news that you don't see. Like, for example, Germany opened up institutional crypto funds as of 2 days ago. So when you see something like that in the industry, you start to see there's a hell of a lot of adoption underneath the hood. But the challenge is that there's a lot of noise going on too, and you have to be able to sift through that noise. And this is where I think it's quite interesting to sift through the noise. And one of them was what I brought up in the room about Jean-Michel Basquiat, the famous artist who committed suicide back in 1988. The NFT actually prevented his work from being sold to someone that stole someone else who's trying to present his work as theirs. And it prevented that person from actually selling his work. So it actually served its purpose of provenance. And I was super happy to see that because my buddy is his cousin. So I was super happy to see a use case come forward where people are actually seeing blockchain, distributed ledger technology, and provenance work.
Yeah. Hey,
that's super nice.
The LVMH innovation of using it to the blockchain, which I think they're calling Aura now, was driven by one of my old friends, Ian Rogers, who's the chief digital officer of LVMH from my hometown of Santa Monica, where we've known each other long before that, where he was CEO of Beats Music, but long before that when he had a startup called Topspin in Santa Monica. And I stay at his house when I stay in Paris. So, and he stays here at my place in Thailand on Christmas. So when
it's a small world in the fashion industry, Tyler. It's a very small world.
He actually just stepped down from his role as chief digital officer at LVMH to join a team that's working on a very stylish cold USB wallet of sorts. So
nice.
Yeah. Anyway,
Super
I'll try.
Fascinating.
Yeah, we'll try and get him in here.
Would love to connect and have a conversation as well because I think this is where the women. I think this is a place where the dynamics of the strategic aspect of an industry that is not sustainable the way it's running right now.
But what do you think would happen if I ran a room with only men? Do you think people would get upset about that? Just only men in the tech industry?
What was that, Charles? I didn't hear.
What do you think would happen if somebody ran a room that was only men, that just allowed? That was just like very specifically only men. Like why?
Your buddy Greg did that a couple days ago.
Did that.
Yeah, I know Greg did that as well.
Maybe you can go check.
Greg actually did that. Actually, but Charles to correct the statement because I think I wasn't clear. But let me.
Who came out on stage too.
Yeah, let me just clarify it, Charles, because Greg did this similar format where basically what he did is he had the men on stage and the women were listening. And what I did is took a page out of his book and made the stage women, but allowed the men to just that raised their hands to come up and ask a question. Of course, when they were complete with their question being answered, we just moved them for efficiency's sakes. We just moved them down to the audience so that the stage did not become overwhelming. And that was, in essence, what was created. And actually, no one had an issue with it except one person. But it was the most of it, everyone had really no problem with it.
I think that was also true in Greg's case, where ultimately, there was a lot of ladies in the audience, and from time to time, one would come up and ask a question, similar format. Yeah, but in net,
Amy,
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Amy, I think we should invite Donna next time. Donna, you want to speak, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, I'd love to
Donna.
come. I'd love to be a part of that. And interesting, at Fordham Law School there is a fashion law. I think it's like a fashion law. It's not an LLM, but it's a specific thing.
What's an LLM, Donna? What's an LLM?
Oh, sorry, an LLM is it's mostly international students that they come and they take 1 year of credit, and that enables them to sit for the bar. Or sometimes somebody might do it if they didn't go to a great law school. They might decide that they want to go for an LLM. It's like a 1 year program. It's 24 credits, and that would push them up a little bit in the. I went to Podunk and now I went to Fordham.
Podunk University. That's the sweat. I want that. I want that sweatshirt, by the way.
Right. No, Donna, it's a master's in law, and you're right. It's usually used by international students coming here, or it's also done in tax.
Yeah, Donna. Sorry, Jen. Yeah. Whoops. Yeah, Donna. Thank you, because you were speaking in acronyms that I'm not a lawyer. I worked for Sullivan & Cromwell, but
I should have done it.
Yeah,
I should
Masters
have
of
been more
Lawyer.
specific. But so
Master
that she's
Law
doing her
Masters.
paper.
Yeah, Law
Yeah,
Masters
she's
without
doing
an
her paper
undergraduate
Okay,
for
law
one at a
degree.
time because I won't be able to understand both of you at the same time.
Okay, shall I go? Law Masters without an undergraduate law degree, LLM.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. And Donna, thank you for explaining it because I know that they do that quite a lot in Europe as well. So I do see that that sort of style is something that's done in Europe when an American comes over to study a strong curriculum in Europe where they already have a base foundation from a school in the United States. So they do that as well over here. And in the European Union, they do it as well.
So,
for a smart, for a clever person from the U.S. Like let's say they could get into Oxford, they can go to Oxford. The program there is 4 years in law. They apply to a U.S. school for the LLM. They do that in 1 year, so they've reduced their schooling from 4+3 to 4+1, and so they save a huge amount
It's
of
pretty
money,
clever.
and
It's
it
clever.
Well,
looks fantastic
it's
on their
done.
CV.
Yeah, but they have to already be a lawyer to get the LLM. So it's a master's in law.
No,
So with it,
no, no, not true. Not true. The LLM, you just need to have graduated from a school in which your major was law, and then you can go for the LLM. So most of the international programs, they've been schooled, but they're not necessarily practicing yet.
thanks,
Got
Donna.
it.
I want to move
Thank
on
you.
to back to tech
Yeah.
headlines. Yeah. So anyway, I have a bunch of headlines, of course, but there's a whole bunch of new folks on stage. Welcome back, Amir, and welcome, Mikey, Brandon, and others. Feel free to flash your mic if you
Cheers.
have something to share. Go ahead, Mikey.
No, I was just merely saying thank you.
You're
That's
very welcome.
really kind of you to
Yeah,
invite me to the stage.
great to have you here. If feel free to chime in anytime. It's very much open mic style, with the exception that we do pause. We have a ladies first format here. Microsoft says it's going to reduce the cut that it takes from PC games in the Windows Store from 30% to 12%, which is quite interesting in the context that both Apple and Google are currently in a big shitstorm in the U.S. About their app stores and the percentages, the 30% fee that they take. So it's very interesting indeed that Microsoft is making this big announcement today that they are reducing their fee from 30% to 12%, which no doubt is related to the duopoly pressure that Apple and Google
What
are under with their stores. Yeah,
what by the way do people think is a just price for that? Because I
great
struggle
question.
with this a lot.
Yeah,
Like what should it be? Like 5%, 10%, 30%? I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
Should it not vary, but depending on what the app is and depending on sort of the
Indeed.
size and scale of it?
yeah.
Indeed. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's something, as I think about pricing, I try to make sure that the things I build, the pricing of it is just, and it's a very hard thing to kind of understand.
I think
Obviously, those of us who are Catholics, there's a long, robust, discussion about just prices and sort of just wages and that sort of thing. But it's something that I struggle with a lot, and I'm just curious of people who are in this room who have other kind of perspectives on it, because yeah.
Mikey, was that you that made that comment a second ago? Yeah. Because I think you might be onto something, evidenced by the fact that both Apple and Google are reducing prices for companies with less than $1 million in revenue, which is all the indication you need that they understand the fact that there should be tiered pricing based on revenue, for example.
No, it's good. Yeah, of course. And I'm very flexible on timing too. I mean, I'm at my hangar all the time, so.
I think you're on a phone call there, yeah? Dezo, are you talking to the room or are you on a phone call? Okay, sorry about that. So Microsoft cutting their fee from 30% to 12%, which is sort of a shot across the bow at Google and Apple with their stores charging 30%. It'll be interesting to see what comes of that.
Right. In theory, if there was a price war, it would be net beneficial for consumers.
Of course.
Right? But there could be a race to the bottom, in which case neither place actually does due diligence on the kind of apps. So it could be quite dangerous.
You're right, Charles. But that's the accusation at hand already, is the The plaintiffs in this big case are stating that Apple really isn't doing much due diligence on this walled garden they've created, and that's evidenced by the fact that some of the top apps in Apple's ecosystem, for example, are these somewhat spammy apps that are charging people without them knowing it, where they inadvertently, accidentally subscribe to fees. Usually, these are games that are masqueraded and targeted at children who accidentally click on something, and next thing you know, they're being charged $9.99 a week. And then the parents try to cancel it, and they are notoriously difficult to cancel as part of the way they're designed. And then Apple gets a cut of that, so Apple does have a financial benefit in keeping that sort of game going. In some respects, of course, they don't want their users to have a bad experience, so it seems they would have a bit of a conflict on that. And that issue was raised in Capitol Hill recently. So it's very complex and multifaceted and nuanced as always. But to your point, I think it'll be very interesting to see how the pricing mechanisms evolve after the senators are done having their time with Apple and Google.
I think Mikey is right. We will get some measure of progressive taxation.
I think
here.
so too.
But it's interesting too because there seems to be times in which they kind of fix it for their friends, right? Yep. I mean, we've seen that before with large companies who essentially get a cheaper rate from the Apple Store.
I mean, that's just life in general. I mean, you get Twitter didn't. You get cities begging big tech companies. I mean, cities compete to get the next Amazon campus and give them tax breaks, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know why apps would be any different. You could have Apple trying to entice, apps to stay by, giving them the bigger your revenue, the lower your rate that you pay. Because my God, they must be making a killing off of Netflix and Spotify and some of these that have these higher monthly subscriptions anyway, with huge user bases. So moving on there. Speaking of Apple reports their record Q2 revenue of about $90 billion, which is up 54% from last year, which, just to put that in context, this is the world's biggest company has grown 54% in the last year, which is just fantastic that you could be the biggest and still growing at 54% per year. And a lot of it is iPhone sales, etc. We did have John, who joined us in the previous time zone, who commented that Goldman Sachs made a statement that they don't think Apple can maintain such growth, which makes a lot of common sense. I don't see how anyone can maintain 54% growth when you're already so big. It's easy to grow.
I feel like just on this entire thing, you already pretty much know how I feel about it. It's just, but as far as their growth is concerned, a big portion of that is because of the M1 chip.
That's right.
Their MacBook line year over year almost grew damn near 100% because of that M1 chip. So there's a lot to it with that. As far as the pricing in the App Store and all of that stuff, for me, it always goes back to just, I mean, if you make something, if you made something and I want it and it's not in my price range, and maybe there's 8 other people and it's not in any of our price range and one person can buy it, then you need to drop your price lower. But if everyone keeps coming and buying it, I mean, obviously the price isn't too high. Like, we're still here buying it. So even if I complain about it, if I'm buying it, I don't need it. At the end of the day, we don't need any of this. No one's forcing anything on anyone. And so it's kind of,
I force myself to go down to the Apple Store and buy this stuff myself. So
it's hard for me to wrap my brain out around the whole, like, forcing someone who, it's like me demanding Target to let me sell my bottled water in their store, but I'm literally just filling up bottles with mud.
I feel like if Apple decide to put the M116, then their revenue is going to improve even further, because I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, that's what's happening. The M1X is gonna, the M1X chip, their next chip is gonna be either announced, if not released, at WWDC, if not a mini event right before WWDC.
Correct.
And then in December, we're going to get the iMac Pro with the M2 chip in it, and that's going to lead into the Mac Pro. And I think that they're going to, again, see another year of insane record growth next year because of this.
Yeah, and not only
I think,
but you could also see a
you've
whole...
already, Tyler, you've already got benchmarks out for whether it's the M1X or the M2 that are showing a 12-core CPU die with 16 GPUs, which means it'll have, this thing will have the same graphics throughput of a 8,000 pound graphics card. So to the point about sort of PC and laptop sales sort of doubling, so they did double. They went from 4 to 8% for Mac. I think they're going to double again. They're going to go from 8 to 15% over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And they'll start to dominate the whole entertainment and gaming side of the PC landscape because, unless you want to go out and build your own state-of-the-art computer based on very expensive components, this is a self-contained, beautiful-looking product that's just going to destroy the competition.
Yeah.
But again, to counter that, and I'm a huge, everyone knows how much I love Apple, but they're not going to dominate in gaming. And the reason for that goes back to what I was just saying earlier. It's not, first of all, it's not Apple's choice to dominate in gaming. It's the developers. They have to decide to come and create those AAA titles on Mac systems. Sure, the chip can do it, but the question is, will those developers show up to kind of put their games on the systems? And I think they will.
But like, aren't a lot of games available through Steam anyway, and like through the Epic Games platform? Like, you can basically run all those games through those two like launchers.
Yeah, and they already are. I mean, already software vendors are rapidly porting, not just Apple, but Adobe and everybody else, even Microsoft. They're porting to the new RISC architecture. So it's going to be like a Field of Dreams thing, where actually if you build it, they do come.
It's interesting.
You can't play Call of Duty on a Mac right now.
No, I know you can't, and but it's not difficult to port basically to different chip architectures. I mean, it takes time and investment, but if you see basically 15% or 20% of the market is consolidated around a single brand, okay, which is it's unheard of, then you will want your games to be played on that platform, especially if you can basically come out with games that are even more photorealistic than the ones that are supported on anything but the bleeding edge. If you want a bleeding edge gaming system, you're talking sort of anywhere between 5 and 10K.
Right. And Jonathan, let me ask you a question.
With the new Mac, you get a 4.5K monitor, and okay, it's an M1 chip at the moment, but games ported to that will basically be able to run as effectively, as fast, if not faster, than the leading gaming rigs. And I know this. I run machine learning algorithms. Skirit and other things, TensorFlow on my Mac 1 Mini. And when I ran some of the benchmarks, I was just blown away. I like 2.8 teraflops worth of throughput.
Yeah.
Jonathan, question for you.
Absolutely.
Jonathan,
I don't disagree.
We're getting into the weeds on technical issues. That is,
I don't disagree.
I wanted to actually bring another point up. Yeah. If that's all right.
What's up?
So I think someone brought up Call of Duty not being able to run on Mac, right? There was actually this job listing that was put up and then instantly taken down by Activision, where they're actually developing Warzone, which is what I would assume you were talking about, for mobile. And since like it's basically the same architecture that they're using for like the iPhones, right? I would assume that they'd probably roll out Warzone for iPhones just along the same time they roll it out for Macs as well.
The question specifically is around the relationship between the software developer and the game video card developer. Okay.
Exactly.
But
the video card developer.
We don't really want to dive into that conversation right now because that's a long conversation. There is the issue of the VR headset or AR headset that might also come out at WWDC. And that's a whole new platform and a whole new race of Apple versus Facebook. If that does develop, be very interesting to see. I'm inviting up Allah Jaff because if you want to promote your club, it seems very interesting. Feel free to do so, because I'm all in favor of finding good content creators on this platform and helping this audience discover other really cool new clubs and other content that I wasn't aware Allah was doing this. He happens to work at Tesla. It looks like you joined us on stage. Allah, are you there?
Hey, yes, I'm here. Hey, Taylor, how are
Hey,
you?
I'm real good,
Nice
thanks.
to see you. Good,
I
good.
have not seen your club, so I can't say that it's the best thing on Clubhouse, but it seems like it could be, given your background as corporate security leader at Tesla, and you're doing a rooms called Security for Startups, which and corporate security, etc. So, could you just give us a little teaser of what that's about?
Yeah, sure. I think it's one of the best clubs on Clubhouse.
Well, yeah. So does your so does your mom, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. No, but seriously, thank you very much for having me up. Yes, I'm leading the security program here at Tesla. So basically, what we do is, I invite experts in my field, my networks, to come and talk to startups and the startup community about what they can do to, become more resilient in an ever-changing world, whether it's cybersecurity, physical security, corporate security. How to protect their reputation, their brand, and things like that. So, we do have a club. We do have a meeting tonight as well, where we'll be talking about that. Next week, we'll have somebody on from the Federal Reserve, a colleague, a friend, who will be talking about how the Bitcoin security is going to be happening through institutional custody and how security is going to be implemented in that. But yeah, in general, I'm just here because I'm fascinated by tech and technology, and I'm always listening in and trying to learn something new from everyone.
So here's something I want to point out, Allah. And Lillian and Todd, right next to you, also are fantastic creators and moderators here on this platform. And as I was talking about with Jeremiah, who inspired this whole tech news thing that's taking off, and starting to grow with Victoria doing VR rooms and me doing the crypto rooms, etc. That it's we need to start promoting and sharing the audiences among some of the better content creators on this platform until the large crowds of Android users show up. So that
absolutely,
yeah. So I
people
just
don't
people don't
Android
give up
users
and
are
drop
forced
out.
to wear a little icon showing who they are.
yeah. There's jokes going around that us iPhone users will somehow want to secretly signify who we are. So we can avoid the Android
It
crowd.
needs to happen. There needs to be
Blue
strict
bubbles
limits
versus
on how
little
many of
green
them are
bubbles.
allowed in rooms. We cannot allow them. This is like PC gaming kind of debate.
Yeah, it's getting into deeps of what the clubhouse is about. But it's interesting you mentioned that, Taylor. There was somebody who I was in one of the clubs the other day, and somebody mentioned that in order to be basically, Clubhouse has become a differentiating factor between the haves and have-nots, and that's because if you're on here, that means you're probably wealthy because you own an Apple product. So that was an interesting take on it, but I'm not sure if it stands true because some people probably have an iPhone. I don't know what version.
Yeah, 4,
An
5,
older
6,
model.
7. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. But I'm making a note to jump into your rooms, and then we had a really interesting conversation yesterday with Flying Car Racing. His real name is Dezo, as you can see on his bio. But super interesting conversation. He's been in this game since the beginning. Is a real pioneer in this space. And a leader in the space. So if you're not creating rooms, Dezo, you should be, because you're a wealth of knowledge on that subject, and I think people could talk.
And a very calm demeanor.
Yeah. Well,
You'd actually be a very good club runner.
Yeah, but
right?
that calmness comes only with decades of experience in a topic, where you can keep all of the hagglers at bay with your decades of experience on a topic, when you clearly know more than everyone else in the room combined. So, but I would totally encourage you to do deep dive rooms around the flying car space, etc. And Amir is a wealth of knowledge and one of the folks that really understands the Tel Aviv ecosystem, and he's one of the key players in the Tel Aviv ecosystem, both as an investor and innovator. So it's great to have you back. And if there's any headlines from Tel Aviv, we'd love to hear them. No doubt you've got another cybersecurity unicorn this week, as you do every week.
Yeah, I'll like to share a bit
Yeah.
update. Actually, the interesting phenomenon lately is the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Traditionally, Tel Aviv Stock Exchange did not embrace too much high-tech startups, and the Israeli unicorns or successful startups were always looking to IPO in US, in some cases in Europe, and never considered Israel a serious place. And the IPOs here in Israel were considered to be like third-tier ones. But since the beginning of COVID, things have changed for multiple reasons. And now there are probably about 60, 70 high-tech companies or IPO'd, which are, some of them are second tier, some of them even touch first tier. And there are about 130 new processes, IPO processes in place, and people work here day and night. And the scene is extremely active, with higher quality companies going to the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, which was never like this before.
Yeah,
it was almost 10 years no real high tech IPOs.
A lot of you guys are really leading on the SPAC phenomena as well.
Yeah, the SPAC. Okay, so companies, I would say, either look for the SPAC or they look for Tel Aviv. So the competitor of the SPAC scene is Tel Aviv, and it's actually, some of them are running in parallel. They are working with underwriters in Tel Aviv and the SPAC at the same time, assuming they are not qualified for a full IPO. Outbrain is going, for example, for full IPO, but Tabula is going for the SPAC, and both of them are actually they merged, and then in the last moment, they broke apart, and one of them is IPOM straight, one of them is SPAC, and they did get offers from Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, but they still choose top tier companies to.
Amir, this is Mikey. One thing that we've not touched upon. I used to be the Special Forces Aviation Component Commander for operations in Baghdad, and what I used to wear on my helmet when I was flying low level over Baghdad was Israeli-made night vision devices. And the defense industrial base, especially for niche capability inside Israel, is massive in terms of the countries that are buying the equipment. The equipment is second to none. So that's an interesting piece as well from the tech side, and the way that Israel is really getting into the military tech and the advanced systems. That I think it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. I'd love to get your view on that.
Well, this has been for a long time. Just as proper disclosure, I'm a F-16 pilot, so Baghdad was one of the targets
Mate,
of my.
That's cool as fuck.
I have 25 years of combat fighter pilot in the Israeli Air Force. Most of them reserved, by the way, and F-16s was most of it A-Force, F-Force, and aerobatic teams. So I'm actually very close to this industry, since my colleagues, friends are in this industry. The main company is Elbit, and in some way IAI.
That's right. The goggles are Elbit. The goggles were made by Elbit.
Yeah, that's one is Elbit, and the Elbit has some spin-offs and incubator accelerators around defense. I still, if I would have this VC, which I am, I prefer always to look at dual use rather than only defense, because I always worry to be too dependent on governments. This is very cyclic and very regulated, and the timeline is very long. So it's better if you're looking for listed companies, public companies. Yes, Elbit is a good investment. But when it comes to more younger companies, growth companies, I still prefer dual use. And more companies are suitable for doing both. You use the same core technology. You can use it either in separate companies, you can do defense and medical, all the way, like Given Imaging, that was kind of a listed company focused on kind of missiles, the head of missiles. At the same time, it created these very small pills you swallow with kind of ability to do colonoscopy in all ways.
We just heard about that company. They really make shit happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very successful company, but it's came from the same technology.
Here, I've got that for you, right?
Make shit happen.
Yeah.
Amir, can I just ask one more question? Amir, what was the coolest bit of tech in the F-16 cockpit?
Well, the thing I always admire is the HUD. The fact that you can look outside and get information, all the information you want without having to look down.
That's the
And
heads-up display, yeah?
Yes.
yeah, the heads-up display, of course, if it's on the helmet is even better, but the quality on the head-up display is amazing. You can get information about all the airplanes around you. You can get information about maps that you can see through. You get multiple targets, and it chooses you what goes where. And now with the F-35, it's even much stronger than that. And that's the coolest part. And the why I'm interested in this even now, because I don't understand why it's still not in the cars. I prefer to look through the window shield and see all the information on the window. Why have to look down to get information? This way you can even see your emails, actually. I don't know why. It's probably too expensive, but it's time to put it on the civil side, the dual use one. Bring it to car.
Yeah, were you doing emails up there at 35,000 feet?
One thing I have to admit, no, please keep it a secret,
Yeah.
please,
Okay.
please.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was in reserve that I had many board meetings and I was conflicted, and so a few times I was using the BlackBerry in different situations.
Canada.
But that was Canada BlackBerry time.
Yep.
That's what I can say.
So Amir, you know the important point about that is like when you get on an airplane and the pilot or the crew say turn your mobile phones off because it'll affect the systems. That's just bullshit.
Total bullshit. Total bullshit. I never obey that. I never obey it because it's. All my friends tell me it's bullshit. It's just in order to control passengers.
That's
If it
funny.
were true, do you think they'd even let us have phones on planes?
No, there was one old planes suffer from some sensitivity in some unique cases, but updated airplanes do not suffer from it. And of course, they would take it away from you if it was really dangerous.
Yeah. I wanted to welcome Leon to the stage. I know you got a meeting that you need to jump into. So you had a headline you wanted to share. And go ahead. And I'm just warning you, Leon, I have a headline to follow immediately after you that I know you're worried people aren't going to like your headline, but I'm warning you, you're really not going to like my headline.
Doesn't matter. If I don't
Okay.
like a headline, I just laugh at it. I
Okay.
would not like give you black eyes. You know me.
Okay.
So
yes, let's warn everybody first, because for those who haven't joined us every day, because we meet here every day, and Leon joins us every day, and we've been doing this for months now. We do often get heated on certain topics from time to time, but we always hug and we meet again the next day, and we have fun and a laugh as we do it. So don't be upset when you see us getting a little overly excited. It's because we actually know each other, respect each other, and meet again regularly. So it's not like normal rooms where people get into arguments. So go ahead, Leon.
before that, I also want to say that I consult my lawyer, which is real. They said if someone lie and attack someone with the inaccurate information, that's a crime in the United States. I can sue that person. So that's okay, great. Should have known that a little bit earlier. So I did have my lawyer up. If you look at my profile, so if you try to attack me with something inaccurate, be careful. You're gonna receive some legal later. Okay, that's it. Now let's get started. All right, what do we got today? What we got today is, Baidu just launched some robot taxi service in Beijing suburb. That's real deal now. And if you click in the news, which is on my profile, which is also posted on Twitter, if you go to my Twitter, make your life a little bit easier. So Baidu is a plan to really get into this. They have this absolute driverless car. They will start launching this in one of the suburb area in Beijing. And actually, as you know, Baidu had already launched several fleets in, I would say, second-tier cities or third-tier cities before. So they have been accumulating information. Now they are like a kind of a start attacking the big boy, but from the periphery, right, which is Beijing. And it looks like from the news, something the plans by the 2022. Olympic game, they would have a fully functional fleet of a driverless car to serve as a taxi.
Oh yeah, because
So that's going to be super interesting.
you have the Beijing Games coming up in 2022.
Exactly.
Right,
exactly.
and the plan is to have driverless taxis ready by then. Yes.
Yeah, that's their grand plan. I mean, Baidu's stock price is not doing well. Hopefully, if this works out, they can, kind of get some share from self-driving car, probably to be share from Tesla, right? Tesla just show us how much money you can make from this, and why not? The more the merrier, right?
Yeah.
You don't like monopoly, I guess. I mean, whether they can do it or not, let's wait and see. And
Yeah.
at least so far, Baidu has not been punished by government, not like,
Right.
Alibaba or Meituan or Pinduoduo, all of them are right now being attacked
Yeah.
badly by the government. So I think, government said, you know what, since you said you're going to be a good boy and support the 2022, let's just give you cut your slack.
So
that's my speculation. Come on, man.
Yeah,
that's
but that's I mean, that's a super smart entrepreneur who takes that perspective in that situation. I think you would agree, yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank
There
you for
go.
that.
That's a fact.
Yep.
That's a fact. I guess if someone disagrees, please come over. I'm
No,
ready.
I mean, we will see. I mean, I'm not going to debate you. I'm actually you know me, Leon. I'm very optimistic that we will have these self-driving cars in the near future, and that would be fantastic if they were at the Beijing Games. What a great way to reveal that.
What I'm saying is someone gonna jump out and say this is based on stolen IP or those kind of stuff. Please come over. I'm ready. Just be careful.
Yes.
You don't want to get a legal letter from me when you say something inaccurate. That's the only thing I want to remind you.
I'm so grateful that you appreciate the American judicial system, Leon.
Someone's recording, okay?
Here we go, folks.
Someone said someone's sending.
Let's extend it to China. What do you think?
Yes. So here's you know damn well who that is, Leon.
It's okay.
Yes.
Just say whatever you said before. Just be careful this time.
You poked him, Leon. You poked him. You poked him. You poked him.
You poked him.
Come on. You poked him.
I can't wait for the civil rights suit of the Uyghurs. I mean, that could be fun, right?
Sure, go ahead. Have nothing to do with me. I'm saying
Leon, you poked
American,
him.
25% Chinese. If that's something to do with you, go ahead, man.
Okay, so
That's
Leon,
why do I care about Uyghur?
That's
your problem, not my problem.
I have an article that here's an article for you, Leon. This one coming from actually one of my favorite publications that I've only learned to appreciate from doing this room, honestly, is Nikkei Asia in Japan. And their headline is about the semiconductors, which is a very hot topic, as we all know. Each day it's this major chip shortage going on. And some of the recent articles about TSMC, where Leon, you were part of the conversation recently with Lawrence, who, if Lawrence, you're in the audience, you can jump up. He lives in Taipei near TSMC. And there was the news that TSMC, this was like a few days ago, that there was a headline that was reported by Bloomberg and Nikkei, mistakenly reported that TSMC is expanding into China with $2.8 billion for expansion of capacity in China. And then Lawrence there in Taiwan said, actually, this is fake news, and the government has said it's fake news. And they asked TSMC, and TSMC says, we don't know where this headline came from, and it's very peculiar, but there's now an update. And here's the update that just came out a few hours ago in Nikkei Japan. Taiwan bans recruitment from China into Taiwanese chip companies like TSMC. So it says Taiwan bans recruitment from China to combat chip talent poaching. Home of TSMC and Foxconn takes drastic moves to secure lead in semiconductors. Taiwan has told staffing companies to remove all listings for jobs in China, a drastic move to prevent the outflow of vital tech talent to the mainland amid rising tensions between Taipei and Beijing.
So are you asking for investment advice?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
So no, this is my personal speculation. I think this is good, right? If you are an investor of TSMC, that means like their cake gonna be preserved for a little bit longer. But one thing you have to realize in the long term, even you have some know-how right now, but the science and technology always moving forward, as you and I, Tyler, you and I know very well.
Yeah.
You cannot protect yourself for too long.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, yes, for sure, TSMC has, I don't know, 3 nanometer or 5 nanometer, right? Fabrication of foundry right now.
Yes.
That's most advanced in the world, even better than Intel, by the way.
Right. That's right.
So the best fabricators in the world is in Taiwan.
Right.
Probably also Samsung, right? Because I read their
Maybe,
report. TSMC said like their biggest threat is actually a competitor is Samsung. I read like another article. So let's say that pretty much tell you South Korea and Taiwan are the two best. I would say, semiconductor, front runner. They're best and they fabricate CPU and the GPU. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So number one, I'm very happy. Why? Because that means that the semiconductor, the front runner are all Asian countries.
Yeah.
So instead of curd Asian countries, rather than curting Americans or Europeans, I think Asian countries still easier because at least I know what food the Taiwanese like and what liquor South Korean people like, right? It's easier for me to do BD. If I were a BD manager, let's say from Huawei, right? So that would be easier. I mean, I know there's a legal rule, there's everything, but the president come and go. The law change and change, on a yearly basis, but the relationship stays forever. If I really win over the people, let's say from South Korea and Taiwan, they will do business with me, right? If they like me, if they don't like me, that's a different story. And then if in this imaginary company, someone hired me and they did not do the good job, I get fired. It's okay. There's another probably 1.4 billion candidates from China. They can do this one by one. Finally, can find someone going to be liked by both countries, and then we're done.
Yeah,
that's my super optimistic view. I mean, I know Amir, he's Israeli, and he and I actually shared a panel before. I really enjoy, this kind of open-minded attitude. Because Amir, I know you have a lot of business in China, and you understand Chinese government much, much better than most Western businessmen. Probably we should listen a bit from him, Amir. What's your point of view? Because I really enjoy your conversation. I believe a few weeks ago when we were in the same room. What do you think?
Thanks. I'm actually, I think that the world is going to the most interesting time. We are going to see a huge clash, actually, that we can take it to the better or to the worse. The competition on all levels is getting stronger and stronger. I see it because we take technology companies to China, and once they go to work with China, they're losing customers in the West. There is a lot of pressure from shareholders on different companies to stop working in China or to reduce the risk or not put the same product, change brand names, use separate structures. There's a lot of issue around currency. So I can see the
Amir,
tension.
yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that in Israel there's been a crackdown on businesses doing business in China in the last few months. Is that your understanding?
It's not exactly. It was Pompeo visit in Israel I think it was about 6 months ago, was focused on stopping Israeli tech companies to cooperate too much with China and stopping some Chinese projects in Israel. He put a lot of pressure in creating some kind of CFIUS in the Israeli government. The reality was that the Israeli government did not create a CFIUS. It only created a committee that is basically, if you can volunteer to request approval from the committee. It's not a must, and no practical measures were done out of that visit. But the tone has changed because there is more and more pressure, political pressure on Israeli companies to reduce the exposure to China.
And
My
how do you feel about that? I mean, I look at your bio and I see you've done a lot of investments between Israel and China. I mean, what's your sense as a sort of expert on it?
My sense, it's Israeli companies will do business in China, the same as American companies will do business in China. The question is how. It might be indirectly, it might be through third countries, it might be in increasing certain sectors and reducing other sectors. Defense is a very tough area, but if we're talking about healthcare, environment related, food tech, agrotech, all these areas, mobility, they are going to just increase. There is no way that politics can come into global tech, but it's not going to be without pressures. There are going to be issues. Looking forward, cooperation is a must. And I can see Israeli companies are still looking, even though they cannot travel to China, but we have every day probably around 20, 30 Zoom calls with Chinese companies. Sometimes they're not located specifically in China. You know that it moved to other countries, the supply chain, but still it's Chinese owned. And you cannot track ownership all the way. It's not realistic, and especially that it moves also to the digital RMB, which I think it's a huge move, because if eventually deals will be done with digital RMB, it's going to open new business models and new structures that we even didn't start dreaming about. Because think what's happening in the crypto world, take that to business models with country related RMB, which doesn't go through the SWIFT. So, the world is going to change very fast, and I don't think it's possible to create walls on tech over time. You can create some problems for a short time.
So, Amir, are you saying like a Chinese public and I mean, not Chinese, a Chinese company? Again, I'm based in Jersey City. Chinese company probably can avoid the how to use the words hegemony of the kind of a U.S. dollar dominant financial system by using
Over
like a
time,
RMB
yes.
over time. Okay,
Over
wow,
time,
that's
not in
bad.
this.
I mean,
Over
that's
time,
bad for
yes.
my business. I kind of heavily weighted on Wall Street. I mean, if Wall Street doesn't have a US dollar, that can be a problem, right?
Yeah, but you have to accept the fact that eventually Shanghai, Shenzhen are going to have their own Wall Street. Maybe it will take 15, 20 years, but there is no way China will be able to become a superpower where it wants to be without having a strong Wall Street style inside China. If you cannot find a way to finance your own companies, global companies, and open your capital markets, you cannot be a superpower. It's not only about military and size. You have to have that. It's a must-have for China. So the way I see it, China is going to open up in stages. There are going to be a lot of ups and downs. There will be crises like Ant Financials, but eventually, if I'm a businessman, I will hedge. I will hedge and work always double as much as I can, unless I have to choose sides. So I choose a side. But if I can, I will always hedge.
Amir, on that point, the Biden administration is probably not going to be as friendly with Israel to be perhaps understated as the Trump regime was. What's your sense? I mean, I know that the DOJ has talked about looking into NSO Group, the sort of Israeli hacking company. What's your sense, sort of, on like the relations between the U.S. and Israel now, given the change in government?
It's a very good question. I think that the relationship between U.S. and Israel will stay very strong. There is nothing that really can break it. It really depends what's going to happen in the next 2-3 weeks in Israel, because, as you may know, there is this: who is going to be the prime minister, what government is going to be in Israel. If it's going to be a kind of a center-related government, kind of a hybrid, it's going to be much more friendly with the Democratic Party than the existing right-wing government led by Netanyahu. So it has some impact on that. But in any case, it will still be close. But things are more based on values rather than on personal relationships. So Israel have to change a little bit some aspects. I do not see U.S. letting Israel suffer too much. The biggest issue is Iran. If you want to go into the military and security issues, how to solve the Iran problem, because this could easily lead into a catastrophic situation.
Well,
Right
I
now,
know our CIA has the view that Iran can be made a more normal country, and Israel, of course, and many of the Middle Eastern states do not share that view. How should one think about this kind of moving forward? I mean, is it possible that just as during the Trump regime we got peaceful agreements between the Middle Eastern countries, we might bring Iran into the fold in the Biden administration, or is that just hopelessly naive?
it's hopelessly naive. I think that the level of extremism in Iran it's so extreme and religious based. If you are not deep into understanding religion, it's very difficult to master the situation. You cannot buy them out by money. You think you pay them money, you just make them stronger. It seems like it's a weakness. It's not translated into things related to let's have harmony, globalization, balance. It's all about weakness and strengths, and the background is religious. So it's tough. It's a tough situation. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you what's going to happen, but I don't see this problem going away.
I want to welcome. This is such a fantastic conversation, but let's just pause for 1 second before we go over the rails. But but I love that it's not, and I really am glad that you're here, Amir. The Taj, I wanted to pull you up, and thanks for jumping up because there's a headline here that Binance is now going to do NFTs. And I can see from your bio that seems like a keen interest of yours. Would love your comment on that, and Ami as well. It seems like this could be what the NFT folks have been waiting for, kind of a mainstreaming of sorts. I mean, second to Coinbase doing it, I imagine this Binance doing this is sort of a dream come true for the NFT space. Any thoughts on that from Taj or Ami?
I think that's an amazing idea. I mean, for this to be developing so fast, and for it to be mainstream like that, that's exactly like what we need. I came on here and I saw William. Shout out to William. William Tong. He's kind of like my a person that we kind of jumped into the space at the same time, and he's been teaching me a lot. And so I've just like we have some major drops coming up, some major drops coming up, but trying to figure out like which form of digital currency to go with has been, and digital crypto to go with, has been like kind of odd. It's been kind of weird because some people are saying, "Oh, you should go with we should go with Ethereum." Oh no, over here, we should go over here with this with this crypto or whatever. And I think I just wanted something that's just more like mainstream, where we don't have to think about things like that. But it's early, so you run into those kind of issues early, and sometimes it feels more like a gamble. So I just I think that's an amazing thing. I think that's amazing, and thank you for bringing me up. And
yeah, of course,
thank you. I learned a lot. I've been on this before.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say, please feel free here on stage because we get a lot. We have a lot of diverse perspectives on a lot of different topics, and one that I would love to see more of is my hometown of LA from the content, the real content creator side. I mean, you know what I mean, being from LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, so please, it'll be super helpful as we evolve into this new creator economy. You come from the real school of the real creators, in our ecosystem. So you've got a kind of legacy perspective on how this is evolving, right? So it'll be very appreciative when we get into these conversations about the new creator economy. I think is an even better word because it's like these creators on Twitter and on, Instagram influencers being called creators. I have a hard time using those words seriously when my friends are making shows on Netflix. Those to me are creators. So So anyway,
what's great about this too is like everything now, right? Everything, like I just got like a call from Jennifer Lopez's team, right? And they're still kind of old school. Everyone's kind of old school, right? Like that way of thinking is like completely changed. And so now I'm like, look, let's think about everything as being an NFT. And I know that's annoying. It's annoying to people, right? To have to change so simply. But I'm like, but you have to be thinking about that and to be telling her team that. It lets me know right now that we really got to jump on the ball and not miss these opportunities. And we have to think about it. We have to think about a completely different album covers. You have to think about the animation part of it now. Like if you're in animation, if you're in animation or you have a kid out there, like a child that wants to get into animation, like now is the time. Like now is the time to like really really push it because the animation side is about to blow up. Like insanely. You know what I mean? Like everything can be still or moving now.
Yeah,
or should be.
I mean, right now, I think you might be doing the same as I'm doing because I have a lot of friends like yourself in LA who are trying to get their heads around this. And it's interesting to see which ones are the early adapters. Like Grimes, is one of the first to kind of jump over from old school to new school. She kind of has one foot in each side. If Tim from Avicii was still alive, I think he honestly would be active in it right now. His partner Ash is one of my dear friends in Stockholm, and I know that's true because he's super excited about him. And it'll be fun to watch for the rest of the year who comes on board in the short term. And I no doubt you'll be playing.
Tyler, if I can just comment
right now too.
Yeah, one second, Faraz. Sorry, was that Michael? Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Faraz. You got it. And we'll talk about. As a matter of fact, Taj, if you want to hop over to our spinoff room today after this one here at 11 a.m., we will definitely end up hitting on that. So,
is that in 15 minutes, Michael?
It sure is.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, okay.
I'll be there.
Yeah. So click on the title of this room, Tech News Around the World, and you'll see our schedule, and you'll see Michael's room as one of the as the next upcoming one, and then you'll see the Tech News Around the World happening tomorrow. You'll see Ami's or Victoria's also upcoming rooms in there. We got a bunch of spin out rooms, which is why it's good to follow Tech News Club. So anyway, just great to see you on stage, and hope to see you again. But you were saying for us.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, and you know, as a person who's been in the investment banking world and the traditional finance world, and then come to this side as well, and always had one foot in the old world and the new, what's very interesting to me for the NFT space, and Todd, so, you know, hats off to you and all the digital creators and all the new artists in the world, such as, you know, my colleagues in this room, such as Victoria and Emma and everyone else. What's very interesting to see is any time that you have the complementation of finance coming into these new digital instruments. For example, that's my daughter going crazy in the back, forgive her. So anytime that you have complementation happening in any sort of financial instrument, whether it be NFTs or whether it be securities of any sort, that is a signal that this is something that has clearly struck minds. And one of the examples that I was trying to give the other day, and then I had to leave for a business call, was Justin Sun's NFT fund, which just bought a Picasso, right? That is a clear indication that this is going somewhere. And just by some of the announcements that are being made, one of the things that I want to bring up is if you look into just over the past 5 years, the number of times that people have spoken about these hundreds of millions of dollars of sorts of funds coming up around art and paintings and paintings and paintings, and that they're going to try and tokenize them and tokenize them and tokenize them and tokenize them, and nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened until NFTs came up. And then since NFTs came up in the past couple of months and saw success, and NFTs didn't come up in the past couple of months, actually, they came up years ago, but they just saw success in the past couple of months. The amount of crap that has been talked about NFTs is phenomenal. But now you've actually got people buying Picassos on them. You've got people buying digital art on them. You've got AR, VR, everything coming into it, and now you've got Picassos being bought in them. Yeah. You've got big people. You've got these guys coming.
The fractional ownership as well is really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a clear signal that everyone has actually been misclassifying NFTs. They've been saying it's a fad. I don't think it's a fad. I think it's a clear recognition that NFTs are going to do what tokenization was trying to do. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I just brought up Mengdi Huang, who works at NVIDIA, which plays a fundamental role in enabling all of what's going on. And I wanted to give the floor to you, Mengdi. Welcome back again. And then we'll go to Mikael, who has a really interesting headline that is relevant, but kind of a warning on the dark side of things. Go ahead, Mengdi.
Hey, Mengdi.
So is it for a headline or just introducing myself?
Yeah, just introducing yourself, because I think people are still learning that NVIDIA plays an incredibly strong role in the crypto space and in the AI space. And many people still think of it as a graphics, company, graphics chip, card company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, actually. Yeah, yesterday, actually, right at a meeting, like our manager was saying that we need to say it again and again to people to educate them because they still think we're a graphics card company. So here I am. Yep. So we're pretty big in data center now. So we just released the great CPU. As you can see, in the past 2 weeks, we had a big conference. GTC.
Huge conference. Yeah. A lot, and you had a lot of announcements come out of there. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. It's very dense. Yeah, the keynote. Yeah, so I would encourage you to break it down a little bit to kind of look at the sections you're most interested in. So like, just to be brief, like I'm kind of in an enterprise AI software team. So like we kind of provide SDKs for a lot of different verticals. So I guess if you're in a specific industry, then it probably has a use case and can probably accelerate your AI related use case in industry. So like for me personally, we are working conversational AI, like, so it's kind of like a speech recognition and also like virtual assistant, that kind of use cases, and like transcription, obviously. And it applies to a lot of industry like healthcare, like insurance sales, or like media, entertainment, and also fintech. And also like I'm going to be involved in a federated learning use case. That's so federated learning is a type of AI that's kind of privacy preserving. So you don't like not all the companies or terminals give the data to a centralized place for them to like aggregate the data, but instead they kind of keep the data in their own terminal, but they train it in their own kind of terminal, but they only upload the weights or the training results to like the centralized space, so that they don't like, and also that there's a lot of techniques to prevent reverse engineering, so that way, like, I mean, these techniques are going to be big in healthcare and fintech, where the privacy is a sensitive issue. Yeah, and also like I think there was a news last week or a few days ago, like EU kind of like released a more strict regulation on data, right? GDPC. So yeah, I guess federated learning will be big in the future.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Mengdi, what
Yeah.
about the Pegasus, the auto drive system, the AI computing platform to handle level 5 driverless cars?
What about it? Is there any specific question you're asking?
Oh, no, I'm just wondering what the status is. I know it's been on the developers have been adopting it.
Oh, you mean the drive kind of platform?
Yes, the
Yeah, I
driverless
think.
cars.
Yeah, I think it's a very active kind of area in NVIDIA too. I think we're also investing a lot in that. Yeah. So yeah, but it's not directly like related to my business unit. So I may not be the best person, but like if you have a general question, I can ask. Yeah.
Very cool. Mikkel, you had an interesting headline around crypto space.
Yes, I think you already discussed the alleged Bitcoin fog operator arrested for money laundering, etc. But I've dug in a bit to the story, so I might be able to add something.
Yeah, because there was we covered it in the previous time zone, not in this room today. So it was a Swedish guy. So I'm wondering if you were able to use and abuse our Swedish mafia to figure out what's really going on.
Yeah, not commenting on that comment, but anyway. So there are some weird things going on. If we start with the actual story, so there is a service on the Tor, not platform, but the Tor network,
right?
Called the Bitcoin Fog. So if you use an onion address, you could access it. It required a mandatory registration and a minimum deposit of 0.01 bitcoins to use it. However, registration was not tied to an email and simply required a username and a password. So it's pretty easy to register. And what the Bitcoin Fog operation did was using a CoinJoin based mixing tool to blend Bitcoin transactions. So basically, you would be able to launder money without tracing any of the payments. At least that's what this guy from Gothenburg is being accused of. And he was arrested this Tuesday on the airport of Los Angeles, if I remember correctly. And he's accused of processing 1.2 million bitcoins, worth at the time around $336 million.
Oh man!
Today, even a much bigger number, of course.
And I imagine the fact that he was busted at the airport means it was probably due to a security camera. Charles, do you happen to know if LAX is using Clearview facial recognition in their cameras at that airport?
He may be on.
Can hear you, yeah. Not really. No, unfortunately cannot.
All right.
Yeah, the FBI has your signal blocked, Charles.
Yeah. So anyway, the Shane Alice's, however you pronounce it, co-founder Jonathan Levin, he has been speaking to Wired, and it seems like the transactions from 2011, where he set up the server, this person from Gothenburg, is what set the IRS off. So they could track him from that initial transaction. After that, of course, everything has been under the radar. So again, one important piece of the puzzle in Bitcoin not being fully anonymous.
Right.
Another thing is that Bitcoin Fog charge some 2 to 2.5% per transaction, which would have brought home the Gothenburg operator some $70 million just in transaction fees. However, having said that, this guy is 32 years old, live in a very small apartment in Gothenburg alone. So it doesn't really compute all the way. But I've been doing some more digging, and I found a Maltese company that he's owning. And seems like some funds have been ending up there. So
the
I
Swedish
would
Malta
guess,
connection. At it
yes,
again.
again. So
Again.
that's what it is.
Yes. Well, that's interesting. That's breaking news. Well done on digging up some of the dirt that nobody else has managed to. That's much appreciated here, but that's what we do at Tech News around the world. I did notice before we hand it over to our friend Michael.
Tyler, just I think for the Bitcoin community being present, which is quite large here,
yeah,
I should say that I did stress that money laundering is one of the alleged offenses, but I think the more important ones for like serious players in the area is that he's also charged with money transmission without a license and unlicensed money transmission.
Yeah.
So for operators, and this is back to 2011. So for operators being active without a money transfer license, this could be quite bad news,
right.
in my view.
Yeah, but this all speaks back. I'm getting flashbacks.
And at the time, this was not an issue, as you might remember. I mean, in 2011, who knew?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. But I'm getting flashbacks of the Pirate Bay again, where they're going to start cracking down, and there'll be penalties to pay, and arrests made, and jail time spent if you don't comply, and that's the state of crypto in 2021. Jonathan, do you want to do your magic to play us out? No, I won't hype it too much in case you're not up for it.
Oh, hey, what's up, Tyler?
Hey.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a little thing to lead us out today.
Yeah, so perfect timing, because we're going to go into Michael's room, which is going to start in a few minutes. But for those who have not witnessed this, you are in for a real treat. Call in your friends. I'll promise you're going to be glad that you did. So we need the key words of the day. The key words of the day were Russian. No. The Swedish mafia Bitcoin hacker. What else do we got?
Facebook, India.
Facebook in India they were blocking the what's the hashtag? Modi, resign Modi. Facebook was blocking resign Modi in India. There was some other good headlines. Help me out.
Stop talent poach.
Oh yeah, the TSMC, the big semiconductor company, is trying to stop the poaching of their workers.
Actually, it's Taiwan government.
Yes. Well, no, they said they can't hire Chinese into TSMC because the Chinese were stealing intellectual property was the problem in that headline that I didn't get into.
Actually, they're even stopping any hiring for China company in Taiwan.
Right. Yeah, they can't hire.
Of any industry. Yeah.
Other headlines that we covered today, there was Google still making a ton of money. Was a big, or no, Apple. Apple's had a record year, still having a huge, making record profits. What was another headline we covered today? Other keywords that we can throw at him.
Well, maybe we can boil these down to a couple of keywords. Yeah,
sure. Yep. You could say Modi, Prime Minister Modi in India. You've got Apple is still exploding financially. You've got TSMC, the chip company, needs to protect themselves. You need
TSMC. That was
TSMC is a big.
We've also had flying cars. We've had flying cars.
Flying cars is a great one. That's a great one, Cal. Content creators. Content creators is a good one. Money, crypto laundering, like Bitcoin laundering. That's a good one.
You had also, for the second time, Sweden asking their workers if they want to stay home or not stay home.
Oh yeah,
like
remote working, tech workers working remote or not. So you can say remote work.
NFTs.
NFT is a good one. Remote work is a good one.
Tyler, don't forget the pigeon and the bee.
Oh, Mo.
No, that's Dave. That wasn't Mo. Hold on.
But Mo is in the audience, no?
We're going to have a chat with him in the other room. If he's in the audience, he can jump up. But we're going to do another room with him shortly. But go. How's that for you, there, Jonathan?
It's looking like a pretty good list.
Okay, good. And tech news around the world as usual.
Right. Anything else that anybody on stage would like to hear in this? You want to throw some words in? Anything you like? Just for background, everybody. So nice to see the people that I recognize. And for any new faces in the room, my name is Jonathan Avery. I graduated from law school recently. I like to come into tech news around the world and chat about the newest developments in tech, though I'm a complete layperson. My passion, though, is music. I've been rapping for 15 years, freestyling for 12, won a couple of freestyle competitions in New York City. I've given 2 TEDx talks on freestyle rap and improvisation. And most recently, I was featured on Shade 45, which is Eminem's Sirius XM radio station. So we're going to get some words down. We've already taken a bunch from Tyler and company, and we're going to see if you guys have any others, which will work into a live freestyle so that you know that this rap is actually off the dome. So any other words from the people on stage? Last.
Future clubhouse icon, referring to yourself.
Hi, this is Deja Molnar. I'm new to this group, and I'm just my background is flying cars.
Yeah,
at this
flying
point
cars.
in aerospace. So I'll be giving. There's a new bubble forming in the flying car business. It used to be that we were the laughing stock of the aerospace world. Now people are buying stock. So please turn to me if you need any advice on how to get your own. And if you're designing one, I'm happy to help. And people are laughing. That's because.
Yep. That's the opportunity.
I'm laughing at how is he going to put all of this into his song?
No, because he was just introducing himself because he saw Jonathan doing that.
Yeah.
It's just a misunderstanding. It's fine. It's all good. So flying cars. That's 2 words in there. Go for it.
CBDC, Jonathan, if you can get that in.
Oh yeah, that's a central bank crypto digital currency.
Wait, who is the CBDC?
For you, Jonathan.
Who is the CBDC?
Dave.
Guys,
complicated for you. The entire song.
What Jonathan? What it means is central bank digital currency.
Bro, he's
overloaded. He's overloaded.
Like we're giving him so much. I just need to know what it is.
Yes, central bank digital currency is like now what's happening is the governments are making their own digital currency. It's like the digital dollar is the America's digital currency to compete with the Bitcoin, and China's done the same with their digital yuan. And the word that we use to describe all of these new digital currencies is CBDC, central bank digital currency.
On the centralized blockchain.
Got it. Cool.
Perfect.
If you can do this, man, I'm going to be seriously impressed.
No pressure.
Remind me one time, the TSMC is what again?
TSMC is a semiconductor company in Taiwan.
Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company. Yeah. But just say TSMC, it's too complicated.
No, I got you. Fantastic. Perfect.
Just to be clear, just to be clear for the wider audience, CBDC is nothing more than digital fiat.
Right. That's one way to think of it. Yeah.
Centralized blockchain.
Yep. All right. I got you guys. Perfect. All right. Let's see what we can do.
No pressure. No pressure.
Hey, Jonathan, should I invite King Los before you start?
Invite whoever you like. Why don't we take 5 seconds to ping just a few more people so we can end with a bang?
Yeah.
Speaking of bang, like we've got VR sex coming up next, so this better be good foreplay.
That's good.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's let the man do his thing.
All right, let's see. Load up an instrumental right here and see what we can do. Can y'all hear the beat?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Let's see. Well, first of all, when I go in freestyle, these rappers can't handle me. I'm blowing up like Apple financially. These rappers hear me, you can feel the envy. I'm conducting all these raps like it's TSMC. To out to Taiwan, no, I spit those bygones be bygones. I'm rapping, I'm the clubhouse icon, but really not yet. But I'm making them sweat. Every time I got a freestyle, they pay me respect. When I'm rapping, then I make it look really easy. I digitize my raps like it's CBDC. No, I gotta go and kill it while it's awfully real. And it's fly as some futuristic automobiles. Those are flying cars. Maybe someday got you flying far. But for now, the whole image seems quite bizarre. And meanwhile, all these beats I'll be clobbering, stealing every show like some crypto laundering. These beats are the ones I'm chasing after. Not like Swedish Mafia hackers, but I'm just a master. No, I keep on rapping. I gotta keep it going and flowing in ways that never quite knowing. And when this beat cuts, it's really a fat drag, like Facebook in India trying to block a hashtag. Resign Modi without political ads on Facebook. I'll tell you that site is quite lonely. And all these reactors have started poaching, but it could be the workers' rights they're finally encroaching. And no, I'm rapping, but I'm taking no notes. Like these Swedish employees, I'll be working remote. No, I do it from home when I do this alone and give you all my freestyles on the microphone. Well, hold up. I got the code like Python, not trying to be the next clubhouse icon. I'm simply doing raps while I'm having some fun and trying to figure out the place from where I finally begun. Have I missed any? No, I don't think so. But let me check my list once again to make sure I flow. No, I gotta keep on going. I'm the one they're chasing after. And I think we already talked about Swedish hackers. That's the mafia. In Sweden, they'll be stopping ya. Yes, I'm like a lyrical hunter the way I'm onto ya. I keep on going, plus they know they think they know me. Yes, I already talked about Resign Modi, but nonetheless, they think I missed a line and they can blow me. And I gotta go and shout out the man Tyler Crowley and Cal Patel. When I rap so well, I gotta do it. No, it never sounds whack as hell. Plus, I'm rapping now for Michael Simpson Jr. Yes, we gotta keep giving Clubhouse its future. And after Cheryl Tong, no, I'm rap's phenomenon. When I gotta keep it going, I'm monstrous as King Kong. From here to Hong Kong, give me swinging long songs. Oh, they're singing swan songs. I'm rapping and long gone. They wanna stick around just to see what's next. But my shit is banging just like some VR sex. So yes, I got these raps that sound like pearls. And this is tech news for you all around the world.
Excellent.
Oh yeah.
Good job, as
Oh,
always. As always,
oh,
great job.
oh, oh,
Wow.
That was.
wow.
Can we set you up with Battle versus King Los, please?
Oh
Can,
no.
can, can, can you say it again that was really ad lib to those people who just came because we pinged them? You know,
Uh-huh.
that's it. It is very impressive as it is, but to find out that it was just made out of the keywords that you gave just before he started rapping, that's awesome. It's mind blowing.
Yeah. Well done. That might be my favorite one yet, man. That was too cool. Thank
Jonathan's actually AI. He's an
Yes.
artificial intelligence system.
GPT-10 right there. Yeah. That's so
Thank
thank
you.
you, Jonathan. And Michael, get your room started and follow Michael. He's going to get his room going right now. You're not going to want to miss it. The people who joined last time still talk about it, a week later. So looking forward to that. And thank you to everybody today on stage, and apologies to anyone who might have got cut off or didn't get to chime in. Please do join us again tomorrow, though, because every voice is welcome on the stage. And thank you to everyone who did share their voice today on
Thank
stage.
you, everyone.
Yes, cheers.
Awesome. Well done, Tyler. Well
Thank
done, guys.
Thank
you.
you.